Hello and welcome to fSobrieTV. I am Craig Woods, and alongside me, well, if it isn't Dr. Preparation H and the Tattletale Twins.
I'm James Hamilton, and I seem to have flown in like a feather off the cosmos. That actually sounded quite sciencey.
I am Alan Todd, and all these little accidents seem random, but maybe I had to become a race car driver, swerve, see my wife cheating with Bump, getting a wreck caused by a mad scientist, reduced to a brain in a tin can, and come and live in this dump with my wacky roommates, you know? Maybe it's some grand scheme designed by the cosmos that brought me to salty Bumps to fight an alligator so I could reunite with Clara and meet my amazing grandson Rory. Don't you see? I had to die, go to the afterlife, see my asshole dad, become a zombie, only to realise I wanted to be a better person. Not for me, but for Clara and Rory. And in that quest, I had too many parky meds and clicked that pop-up. Even though Vic told me not to, but Chipmunk Jump opened the gate when I didn't know there was one, you see. Point is, I took a risk and it sent me on this hero's journey with Private Nuttles. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. I was getting carried away.
And that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening.
And Alan wins the intro competition.
Most obnoxious intro ever.
All of which means, of course, we are back to talk Doom Patrol, specifically Season 3, Episodes 6 and 7.
I watched episodes 6 and 7 today in preparation for the podcast, and my sides were splitting. My face was aching.
How does it get better each episode? How is that?
Yeah, just a heads up, guys. Both episodes are 9.5 out of 9 for me. I'm just going to drop those scores in there right now.
Spoilers. Yeah, so we're continuing our slightly delayed coverage of Doom Patrol, but I think it's been worth it. Hope who's ever listened to this, that you're enjoying it and finding it worth it, the slight delay. If you're listening to this and you're up to speed with Doom Patrol, you know more than we do at the moment. So we've only watched as far as episode 7 presently. But 3 episodes left, guys. And it's a weird thing, because I feel like simultaneously 3 episodes is a lot considering where episode 7 leaves us, but at the same time there's so much more they could do here that obviously I'd rather they just added on an extra 5 episodes to give us the full 15, which for me is the standard season length for Doom Patrol, because that's what we got in season 1.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of story left to tell, but simultaneously it seems like they've not taken their foot off the accelerator this season at all. So
Cliff is clearly driving.
Yep.
Full of parky meds.
It seems like the Sisterhood of Dada storyline is fast wrapping up, or is it just beginning?
Yeah, I feel like they've done a lot of world building with that whole set of characters, and now it's a case of we're finally getting to sort of play with the toys, as it were. We've established what the game is, now we get to play. So the fact we've got 3 whole episodes is pretty great.
When we recorded our previous episode, had the fandom been yet? I don't think it had it?
I think it was between episodes.
I don't think we mentioned it, which means that we didn't get to mention last time about Season 4 of Doom Patrol being confirmed.
Oh,
yes.
Sweet. That's
Which
a good
is-
point.
Yep. Excellent
Yep.
news.
So,
Indeed.
yeah, we've got at least one more season of our favourite dysfunctional family.
Every episode that I watch, I'm just waiting on the fucking shoe dropping that it's been cancelled. So no, that's amazing. I'm absolutely delighted with that.
Yeah. I think we've been expecting that every year.
Yeah.
So we're
fucking
overjoyed
episode,
when it goes the other way.
I mean, someone's obviously watching it that's not us, so that's good to know.
Alright, shall we dig on in then to episode 6,
Let's.
1917 Patrol?
Let's drill in like we were in a time machine.
Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 6, 1917 Patrol was written by April Fitzsimmons and it was directed by Omar Maddah. Now, interestingly, Omar Maddah is a British director, and I've seen his name before, I think, but I knew I'd recognised his name from somewhere else, and it was from something that I'd subtitled, and that something was long-running, youth-oriented, daytime British soap opera Hollyoaks.
What the fuck?
From Hollyoaks to Doom Patrol for our American listeners is quite the jump.
Chester Patrol.
What's an American sort of version of Hollyoaks? What would a comparison like Degrassi or something?
I think this is a difficult thing though, because I've had this conversation with so many people before, that a UK soap opera is actually an entirely different genre from a US soap opera. So even though they're both called the same thing, they're actually, like, what we do in the UK as a soap opera is not something Americans would recognise as being a soap opera.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's poor people in fucking British ones.
Right, exactly. They usually follow, a lot of them anyway, follow working class people, whereas US soap operas tend to be quite glamorous.
There are fewer evil twins.
Yes. I wish there were more evil twins, that's what we need.
This episode should have been called Kitchen Sink Patrol, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see Coronation Street rock up with like a fucking Sunset Beach storyline just once.
Gail Platt with the pure coiffed hair and shit.
A perfect amalgam of those two genres, I think, would actually be my favourite telly. Anyway, moving on. The Maestro of Hollyoaks, this is what he's serving up. Now, in my notes here, I've written that this episode is very much, first of all, it's a very Rita-heavy episode. Mm-hmm. It's mainly Rita's story. And also all of the characters are very much segregated from each other. Oh yeah, absolutely. Anybody who's not in and up for a Rita episode, fuck you. Also, why are you watching this show?
Fuck all the way off.
So in my notes, I've basically done my coverage of the episode character by character, and I think that's probably the best way to talk about it.
Yep, that sounds like a plan.
So shall we leave Rita to last, since she's got the biggest stuff, and we'll just get the other stuff out of the way? Does that sound sensible?
Yeah, why don't we start with Jane/Kay?
I'm up for that. So this episode, Jane makes good on her promise from the previous episode. She sends Kay up for shoes to the real world.
That can't possibly have any real consequences, right? That should be fine.
Well, weirdly, it ends up not having the consequences that I feared it might.
Yeah. I did not anticipate Kay's first real act being primary of her own body. It was stealing a bike, though.
Yeah, this whole thing. I mean, this whole setup was really beautiful, though. I mean, obviously the show gets great mileage out of the metaphor, just the metaphorical quality of the underground. And you forget sometimes as you're watching this show, when Jane is walking Kay to the train station and watching her get on the train, it's like, yeah, this is all in her mind. This is all subconscious. It's like it's still just a great metaphorical setup. But I love the whole Jane pantomiming, yes, I'm going to go up and get shoes for you, and turn to Kay and go, shh. It's like, that's all really sweet.
Diane Guerrero as Kay, as Jane as Kay.
Yeah,
is yet another incredible performance of the it's Tatiana Maslany levels of how do you suddenly become another character like that, while being the same character. But drop Isn't She Lovely in super early for Diane Guerrero because her performances continue
just
to
take
be
it as read.
mind-blowing.
It's always present.
Yeah.
I remember you and I talking, James, on our Doom Patrol Season 1 conversation. I remember saying that they used to do that effect over Diane Guerrero's face when there was a transition from persona to persona. It's been a while since we've seen that, so I don't know whether they've retired that. But I remember saying, I feel like it's slightly a disservice to Diane Guerrero's performance that they do that, because you can completely tell when she's a different persona, because her whole mannerisms just change completely. And we don't see anything like that this time. Well, I mean, there's no need for it. We know that when this version of Jane appears in the real world, we know that it's Kay. In the pilot seat, as it were. But I mean, you're right, everything about her performance is just so completely unlike any of the other characters she's done on this show, and she does seem absolutely childlike. All the tears in this scene. But also I was super anxious, because I was like, don't let anything bad happen to Kay up here. I will never forgive you, show, if you do that.
But they're not going to be that obvious.
Yeah, nothing bad happened up there, but going the next episode and later on in this one, it's obviously sowing the seeds for some bad shit in the underground.
Aye, it's what's going on inside Jane that we need to worry about. But this whole thing, like when she first noticed the bike and she just rides it off, at that point I was getting heart palpitations. It's like, no, Kay, don't do that. And oddly enough, there wasn't any blowback from that. That in itself was fine. And again, it does it again later when that guy appears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Jane panics at that point. It's like, don't talk to him, we don't know who he is. And then he turns out to just be a really nice guy.
Just like, are you learning to ride a bike? Watch out for cars. Okay, bye.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's fact that she's clearly an adult woman, and he doesn't say it about it. He's just a nice guy.
They're just like kind of wandered in from Mr. Rogers' neighbourhood.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And the way this is shot and everything, the edited, and there's a lot of kind of digital effects with the colours, I think, to make everything look very almost sepia toned and golden. You know, I love the score in this scene when Kay is riding the bike. Once again, shout out to Clint Mansell and Kevin Kiner. They're doing the good work here. But the flip side of that is we've still got Jane, who can fire out some acerbic witticisms. Pretty Polly turns up.
fuck yourself sideways.
Fuck yourself sideways, Pretty Polly. The Pretty Polly, I've got some questions about Pretty Polly at this point, because she seems to be on Dr. Harrison's wagon right now, and it does seem to be Dr. Harrison is leading this campaign here to keep Kay where she was, essentially. But Pretty Polly seems a wee bit uncertain. Like, she seems certain at times, and then other times she looks a bit nervous. My prediction is Pretty Polly will be one of the first ones to turn her back on Dr. Harrison.
Or Jane will murder her first.
Yeah, well, yes, she does threaten to fuck her up later. But I do really love this line here where Jane says to her, kindness could be one of her actual commodities. That is really sweet, and I love the idea that Jane is essentially, she's reached a point where she, you know, her whole life now is about something bigger than herself. And it's kind of similar to a journey that the other characters are on as well. We'll obviously talk about Rita in great detail, but she's doing the same thing. In fact, she even has lines of dialogue in these next two episodes that are very evocative of that idea. And Vic, likewise, he's having his whole identity crisis. He's trying to find not just who he is, but how he can live a life that's actually meaningful on his own terms, but actually at the same time serve some greater purpose. And how does he balance those things? So it's definitely a running theme with that stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a theme in this episode. There's a moment in this episode where all the main characters seem to reach a point of self-understanding and self-peace. Like, they all make breakthroughs, and then they're all almost immediately undermined.
Yeah, in true Doom Patrol fashion. So Kay eventually returns to the underground unscathed and with the mental avatar of this bike that she's brought back. I did have questions for a second though. I was like, does that mean that Jane actually rode the bike all the way to Doom Manor? Is it sitting in Jane's bedroom somewhere?
Cliff probably fucking sold it.
Well, that's true. Get rid of the evidence. Good plan, Cliff.
Maybe the other personalities didn't steal it. Maybe it's just because Cliff sold it and it was gone.
We've cracked it, guys. That's going to be the twist. The others arrive just as Kay is arriving back, and that's where Jane gives that line, if it isn't Dr. Preparation H and the Tattletale twins. I love how happy Kay is, ringing the bike bell. That's so cute. And again, Jane has this line to Dr. Harrison, who says, 70 years she's been wrapped up in her own trauma, as she went out there for, you know, a matter of an hour or so, and she found a little joy. Some things are worth the risk. And again, that's kind of an echo of where Rita's going as well. There's a conversation that they have in the Dada party pad that we'll mention later, that Rita has a very similar sort of line. And it's quite interesting that they chose to juxtapose those two scenes in the same episode, because the meaning on the surface is different, but they could have similar kind of grave consequences. Well, we know what the consequences are because we've seen episode 7 for Rita and co. But she tells Dr. Harrison this is what growth looks like. And Dr. Harrison, man, Jesus, she was so cool in season 1. Now she's just annoying the piss out of me.
Yeah. Also, I think Larry might have a kind of different take on what growth looks like.
But Dr. Harrison, she made my skin crawl with this one line where she says, if you don't stop this divisive behaviour, then there'll be consequences. And I'm like, oh, this is every centrist arsehole I've ever encountered. Like trying to attain some kind of artificial moral high ground when there is plainly a good thing and a bad thing to be done in a situation. It's also that arsehole that says, oh, listen to both sides. It's the fuck you. Dr. Harrison is that gaslighting arsehole in this scene.
Big character actress Margot Martindale channeling Nurse Ratched for me. Like, that's like...
Yeah, Margot Martindale's character from The Americans, there is big vibes of that, you're right. I might as well mention this here. I don't know where this stuff with Dr. Harrison is going to go necessarily. I don't have any predictions about how it's going to end, but I did wonder. We know that Dr. Harrison's power is essentially the power of persuasion. Like, she can just persuade people to do stuff. Is it possible she's persuading the entirety of Kay's other personas that this is a good idea, and that they're actually doing it against their will? Yeah, and that could be explained why Pretty Polly seems to have those slight moments of clarity.
Yeah, it would make sense as to why all of the personalities in the Underground are suddenly so against the idea of Kay healing.
Because there's a few of them, like, it seems really uncharacteristic. Like Hammerhead, for example. I'm really struggling to understand what Hammerhead's rationale is. Out of the ones we see most often, Hammerhead, I would say, is the one closest to Jane, in that I feel like she would recognise the truth in what Jane is trying to say. So, yeah, don't know. Put a pin in that. That about wraps it up for Jane on episode 6. Shall we move on to Vic? Because we don't see a lot of him in this episode, but he's got his whole identity crisis going on. But it's quite funny, the start of his journey in this episode, though, because of all people, he tries to talk to Cliff about it. And Cliff will talk about it in a moment, but he's got his old deal going on, that he's in no place to talk to anybody. Even at the best of times, Cliff is not the guy to speak to about these things. So I don't know what Vic was hoping for here.
Cliff's opinion on Vic being Cyborg is that he's a fucking god. He could bang the entire cast of The Love Boat or Knots Landing. Vic says that's not what I'm in this for.
Yeah. Said no superhero ever. But Vic clearly still got Lloyd Frenzy Jefferson living in his head rent-free, as posing all the philosophical questions. Am I the hammer or am I the nail? And all the rest of it. Yeah, right, yeah. And Cliff, I do really enjoy Cliff's comment that I don't know, shitty life decisions aren't my speciality. The supreme irony of that statement in this moment is so good.
He does give Vic the advice of maybe talk to someone who gives a shit.
Yes, yeah. Which, to be fair, is not bad advice. Yeah. So Vic ends up going hiking to his mum's favourite spot that she mentioned back in the afterlife, and on his way up, there's those two hikers walking down that grab a quick photo of him, and so he switches off his notifications, and it's this idea that he's kind of trying to walk away from Cyborg at this point. There's a couple of moments here we get old classic, which is it's not a thing you see that much anymore, but repeats of old dialogue from other characters playing over the soundtrack in voiceover. It really stood out to me. It's like, that's not a thing I see very often these days. Going back to soap operas, it's a thing you see in US soap operas all the time.
Or Airplane.
Yeah, that too. But it kind of works. Jovan Wade is doing a lot with very little here. He's really just emoting with no dialogue, apart from telling his mom, or is it Lloyd that he's telling, you were right?
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
But he definitely does seem to come to a resolution.
Yes, yeah. There's a real decision seems to take place here, and indeed towards the end of the episode, he goes to see Dr. Chalmers, who we know very little about this time. We'll find out in the next episode. But he goes to see her under his own name, and then you really see that moment where he's just looking over the questionnaire that he's given, but what is it you want to change and why? How will your life improve? And he really seems unsure, and it's like, poor Vic, man. Fucking Lloyd fucked him up. I mean, he was already fucked up, to be fair. But, yeah, he's not having a good time.
Yeah, but like I say, Joy Van Wade is great. He's really subtle in his performances, and I think last episode we gave him some shout-outs because we might have overlooked him in previous episodes where we talked about Doom Patrol, but that man can act.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's really great in this role.
When you consider he's cutting about with like plastic metal on his face all the time.
And a hoodie.
Yeah.
He's kind of unfortunate in that he's like the Boy Scout character as well, in amongst Cliff, Jane, and Larry and Rita are just fucking off the wall nuts most of the time. So he's kind of let's go save the day, like just kind of Superman, Shazam, big red cheese type thing. So
I suppose what the show's getting mileage out of now is the idea that they're all misfits very obviously in a very obvious way. Whereas Vic is now on the surface in his behaviour he's a Boy Scout, but at the same time it's like, mate, you've got like fucking, you're half metal, what's going on? You cannot pretend to be a normal guy. And so it's interesting, the show has been building to this for a while, and it's really getting great mileage now out of Vic realising or accepting finally that he is a misfit also, you know, and that the whole hero thing was, amongst many other things, it was also a way for him to evade the truth about himself, which is exactly what one of the things Lloyd was getting at. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the journey they're taking him on. I think Joy Van Wade is absolutely knocking it out of the park. But to be an actor and to have all that shit on you that looks so ludicrous and still find it in your core to say, oh no, remember what my motivation is, remember to emote, you know, and he just locks right into that character without missing a beat. He's great.
There'll be plenty more to say about him when we talk about the next episode, though.
Indeed. We'll segue to Cliff, since we mentioned him earlier. So Cliff, increasing in his downward spiral here. Last time we saw him, he was full of Parkinson's medication, and he was clicking on every pop-up on the internet.
The good news is, though, if he can just get Private Nuttles to the Hazelnut Highway, it'll be frickin' awesome. Like,
yeah, we're cruelly ignoring the adventure that Cliff is on here. He thinks he's fighting the good fight. That's what's happening here. He's fighting his own demons.
He has a support group of Private Nuttles, his online poker dealer, and Ginger the cam girl.
My cam girl. I've written here, this is like I said in a previous episode, this was reminded, it's giving me big Ellen Burstyn and Requiem for a Dream vibes. Now it's like a cross between that and that Lemmy sketch about the plasterer. Which, if you don't know it, I'm going to link it in the episode description. Yeah, but it's one of Lemmy's best ever sketches.
I told you not to waste your time with me.
Oh, it's just a wee dream I had there, Hen. That's just my trusty cam girl, Ginger.
Bingo.
But yeah, if you were to make a Requiem for a Dream supercut of that sketch and just put Clint Mansell's score over it, it would basically be what we have here with Cliff.
The worst part about this is it's absolutely tragic what Cliff's going through, but
100%.
It's so funny.
As much as this is hilarious, right, I am now at a point now, though, in these last two episodes, where watching Cliff is actually giving me anxiety. I can't take it anymore, man. It's like, don't prolong this anymore. I'm actually finding it hard to breathe watching these scenes.
The next episode, when he's over at his daughter's house, and he's the close-up of the credit card, I was just like, oh my God.
I'll talk about that in a bit, but my heart was pounding at this. He's like, no, it's in a cold sweat. Don't do it, Cliff. Jesus Christ.
These are all, I think I just said before we started recording to Craig, but everything that Cliff's doing are all like legit side effects of Parkinson's medication. It's just that it's so concentrated because of the amount he took. It's basically like watching one of those American pharmacy adverts where it's like, side effects may include, and then they scroll up the screen super fast. Every one of those is exactly what he's going through.
So he's disturbed for a moment. No, I say he was disturbed for a moment. He's clearly profoundly disturbed. He's disturbed outwardly also when Laura is trying to ask him about what he found out about the Sisterhood. And he tries to draw her a picture of the symbol.
What's that?
It's like, look, robot fingers. And it's one of two instances in this episode of Laura smashing more teacups.
Oh, it's so good.
Smashes it over his dome.
Got a foot up his ass, not in a good way.
So later his credit card declines. Ginger regrets to inform him. And now in full Ellen Burstyn mode, he tells her that his roomie is Cyborg, and he starts to wonder how much someone will pay for a date with Cyborg on eBay. I mean, this shit, as much as it's giving me anxiety, it's also, my sides are in so much pain. It's like, how does this show keep doing this?
Do you know what? I'm just going to say this right now. He gets that advert for a date with Cyborg up super quick.
Yeah.
I sold something on eBay for the first time ever yesterday, in point of fact. And to actually set up to sell something on eBay takes fucking ages, so good on Cliff for getting that advert up so quickly.
I've I've got it down to a science now, so I'm just guessing that Cliff is in the same boat as me, where he's just kind of like boom, 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 like.
Yeah, so from there, he seems to think like this is all some kind of epiphany, and that's when he has that fantastic monologue that you appropriated for your intro. Someone online offers to buy the blueprints for his robot body, to which Cliff muses, I mean, it's basically my DNA, but...
So
and he has a very brief moment of clarity, and then he just decides to accept. Now, side note here, I don't know where this is going, but I've got a feeling of somewhere it could go. So I don't know if this is going to be a possible spoiler or not, but in the comics, in Grant Morrison's run, there is a plot about halfway through Grant Morrison's run where the Chief makes Cliff a new super advanced, super slick body. And at first it works like gangbusters, but then it starts malfunctioning. And so Cliff's brain has to be removed from it. And in true Grant Morrison style, it turns out it's because the robot body itself has achieved sentience and refuses to be ruled by a human brain. But in the interim, after Cliff's brain is removed, Monsieur Mala gets hold of the robot body and puts the brain in it. So the brain now occupies Cliff's body. Given we've seen the brain and Monsieur Mala in this season, is that a possibility that's going to happen?
I hope so.
So yeah, that a bit wraps it up for Cliff for this episode. So watch this space, I guess. Watch this space where his brain used to be. So we don't see much of Larry this episode, but what we do see, fuck me, he has a big moment in this episode.
Right? I loved that. I was a wee bit teary, not going to lie.
Yeah, same.
Him and his boy.
He nurses Paul back to health, and we, like Larry, I think, were under the impression the previous episode, I think we were only under the impression of it because Larry seemed so sure about it, that the Bureau must have coerced Paul or brainwashed him or some such thing. But Paul straight up says, no, I chose the Bureau. And you can see how devastating this is for Larry. And, you know, again, this is an example of just how well this show creates absolutely absurd situations but makes them all about human truth. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of what Paul says here in this scene is exactly evocative of the kind of things that a lot of very hardcore conservatives say, in the sense that he just wants stuff to be quote-unquote normal, and he'll do anything to achieve that. Anything that he deems a bit abnormal, he's quite happy for it to be dealt with in whatever way, as long as he doesn't have to look at it. You can understand where Paul's coming from, because clearly he had to grow up with the legacy of Larry Traynor and all this mad conspiracy shit that his brother started spouting, and then finding out, you know, decades later that his dad is still alive with a negative spirit. You know, it can't be easy to deal with.
I mean, we've all been there, but...
I'm not making excuses for Paul's behaviour. Paul's a massive dauber.
But he's not a one-dimensional dauber, and that's something the show does really well. Yeah.
3D daubers. Love it.
Just like Nightmare on Elm Street 5, 6.
But yeah, you can trace the root of how Paul got to where he is, and it makes sense. So this confrontation between the two characters, it's a big moment for Larry, because Larry finally accepts in this moment he can't change this. Nothing he can do is going to work. And the line that really got to me in Larry's, there's a few actually, but one of the earlier ones is when he's remembering when his wife was pregnant and that Paul kicked, and Larry says, I knew then you were going to grow up to be tall, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I loved you from the moment I knew you were on the way, and you can't take that from me. And I was like, ooh, Larry, goddamn.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy sometimes for somebody in Paul's position to just assume that Larry doesn't care. And I think that has been, and he even says it in this scene, it's like, you were just trying to protect yourself, you didn't ever care about us. Larry saying, no, but I do care. You're right, I was running away, but that doesn't mean I don't care. And then when the stuff that really got to me in this, I really got a sense of just the sheer weight of Larry's experience in this monologue. You really get the sense this is a guy who, for 60 years, has been utterly alone, even though he's got these weirdo misfits as his makeshift family. He's been so solitary. He even says that no one has touched me in 60 years. I've never been able to touch anyone else. It's fucking devastating.
I had to wrap myself in these bandages every day and then unwrap just to take a piss.
And Larry's conclusion is that he's reached a point where he can forgive himself for the things he did. And that's a big moment for Larry. And I think we've spent, I think, all of our Doom Patrol coverage going, give this guy a break, for fuck's sake. And I think it's fine that Larry's allowed to give himself a break.
When he tells his boy to get out, like he says, I think I want you to leave now, like I was like almost cheering. I was so fucking pleased for him. Like it's a nice moment for our Larry.
It is, but it's one of those things. It's perfectly written drama because it's still tragic. It's still tragic that these two can never see eye to eye, and Paul will still walk away feeling angry at Larry, even though he's had this truth bomb. He'll still walk away feeling angry because there's no you just the same way that Paul can't take the good memories from Larry. Larry can't take Paul's justifiable anger from him. And all of those things come across in this scene. Man, it's just so well written for a scene in which we're looking at a guy dressed as a fucking mummy with a moving tumour under his bandages. And I love the beat at the end of this scene when Paul leaves. Like Larry just looks to the sky, and it's like, oh, Larry, where's your goddamn negative spirit? And all we get from the rest of this episode, we see him watering his plants, and then he begins to do a retch. And it looks like he's about to throw something up.
What
coming
out?
What could that be, guys?
We'll find out later.
Whatever could it be?
Paging David Cronenberg.
Yeah, for realsies. I think we should just mention Laura real quick, and then we'll get into the meat and bones of Rita. But Laura basically spends this episode trying to find out what the Sisterhood of Dada are and want. And there's no point in trying to get information out of Cliff. That's a fucking lost cause. And we only really get her again towards the end of the episode, when she's looking over what documents she has. And she mutters to herself, Sisterhood of Dada, whatever you're after, it won't be me.
Yeah.
And then smashes a teacup on the fireplace. It's almost like a divining act. They're throwing the teacup at this point. And then responds to the fireplace, just spews flames, and we get that great message in the voice of all the other members of the Sisters saying, well, maybe it is. And the PIFFLE-PAFFLE splashed across the wall, which, once again, simultaneously ridiculous and kind of creepy.
Yeah.
All right.
Shall we take a trip back to 1917 in Iowa then?
Meat and bones of this episode is all Rita, so let's get into it. I really love the opening sort of prologue to this episode with Rita in the time machine, and we get this voiceover.
Did you watch with the subtitles?
I didn't, but I read online that the voiceover is credited.
I watched the episodes with subtitles when I'm taking notes, and did I forget? Has this character been in it before? I didn't recognise the name Shipley.
Yeah, no. So I don't know if Shipley is meant to be the ship with some kind of consciousness just narrating this for us. I don't know. But the voice actor as well is nobody we've seen either. He's got a soothing voice.
Yep, it's this velvety voiced fuck.
Yeah, one in a long line of Doom Patrol velvety voiced fucks. I really enjoy this whole sequence because, see, it's kind of a microcosm of almost everything Doom Patrol does so well. Because I had so many feels just in this short montage of Rita realising the weight of her own existence and how, and as Shipley describes it, just how little of her own life she actually chose. Even when we see her nemesis floating outside the window from the play,
yeah,
which is hilarious, but it still doesn't do anything to affect the melancholy. It's incredible they can combine those elements, and it's still successful. And there's tears floating weightlessly up to the roof of the ship and just dispersing, and that kind of being like a visual metaphor for Rita losing all of her anxiety as well as her memory, all of her neuroses, and just kind of being born afresh. It was really beautiful. The only thing I did think about it though, and it's not really a negative thing, it just made me, and there could be an alternative version of this. You could do an alternative version of this without the voiceover, and I actually think it would work. We know Rita so well that we can kind of interpret for ourselves what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I would quite like to see an alternate cut of this where the voiceover is removed.
What was the name of the director again?
Omar Maddah.
Hashtag release that Maddah cut. Let's start the campaign right here.
Well, he seems to be the guy that puts the voiceovers in, because they had the voiceovers with Vic as well, so
That's
he's
true.
Mr. Voiceovers.
Yeah, that's his thing. These are my things.
these are my things.
Fuck off!
Maybe he was just a big fan of David Lynch's Dune.
Yeah, so Rita lands, 1917, Iowa. We get a comedy farm lady.
Betty Ann Bucklestone.
Oh, is that her name?
Yeah. I made a note of her name like it would be important.
She asks Rita her name, and this is when we realise, of course, that I guess time travel just causes memory loss in this universe.
It's a good question.
Rita quite clearly has no idea who she is. Yes, and she repeats Laura's whole shtick from a few episodes ago. Good question.
Yeah, the exact response. Good question. Here's the thing.
It's clobbering time.
She loses all of her memories because she loses all of her bad memories. I wonder if it's sort of indicating that so much of someone's personality is wrapped up in their trauma that you cry out your memories. I don't know.
That's actually a good point, because if you think about where we see Laura of 1949 go,
Yeah.
and compare her to the Laura in present day,
Yeah, she's like,
who
I
is
don't think I'm a
convinced
bad
she's a
person.
good person.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it sort of makes sense that, she's left all of that, egregious stuff she did behind, which I imagine we'll have more to talk about regards Laura and her own trauma and how these things have affected her, not just in the next episode, but in the remaining episodes to come. Mm-hmm. But I think it's fair to assume that Laura was racked with guilt for quite a while after that. I mean, she seems guilty in the act itself when she does the thing at the end of episode 7. Yep. So it does kind of make sense to me. I jumped off my chair in excitement, though, at this bit, because who's looking on but Monsieur Mallet and the Brain? I love the idea that this time machine has just landed in buttfuck Iowa, and for some reason Monsieur Mallet and the Brain are immediately there. So, wait, there's some weird shit going on. Let's get there real quick.
In our tiny little evil mobile.
Yeah, just Miss Penelope car. The Brain, he wants to capture every detail of the time machine so he can reverse engineer it. He openly says this. So, question for you guys. Mm-hmm. Is this, a la Netflix's Dark, a timey-wimey paradox wherein the time machine has no creator because the time machine that the Brain goes on to create is based on the time machine that he supposedly also already created?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was getting big Dark vibes from this.
Yeah, spoiler for Dark.
And it also goes some way to explain why they have their picture of Rita to give to our boy Gargax. Yeah,
it's all coming together at last. But yeah, that was my feels. I was like, this is a Jonas's fucking time machine. Yeah.
Spoiler for the Dark if no one's seen it, but if you've not seen it, what the fuck? Watch it now, it's amazing.
Yeah. Don't do a Jasmine from Damn Fine TV and watch the fucking dubbed version. So, I like the two agents. I do enjoy the costumes here. It's like they're the original Men in Black. So they take her to the Bureau. I guess now this would be, according to what we were told by Niles in Season 1, this would be just about the time that it's changing over to the Bureau of Normalcy.
Yeah.
Because it was in reaction to World War One. Niles tells us in Season 1 that the Bureau became too paranoid and there were forces at the top that wanted to clamp down and say, no, we should be finding ways to control these things rather than just studying them. This is a tumultuous time at the Bureau, and we can see what kind of effect that has on one Laura DeMille. But Rita is taken there to Laura DeMille's office.
After telling the guys that her name is Laura DeMille.
Right, yes. So this recruitment office where she meets Laura and muses, we have the same name.
I love when she's waiting outside. You just hear the flames and the guy comes out smoking.
So Laura sets about testing what Rita's abilities might be.
That whole bit though, like, see when she's just like got a light, no, and then she's like holding the match.
I was just about to mention that. But it's when she strikes the match on the sole of her shoe.
Amazing. Aye. So good.
Part of me is like, did they get Michelle Gomez to do that because Michelle Gomez said she could do that? Or was it already in the script? Who knows?
Also, did either of you guys, when she said that, just immediately go, got a light?
Yes. That's a hip reference to Twin Peaks Return for you kids.
Yeah, I love she says, not fire, and then Rita blows the match out and she goes, not telekinesis.
Telekinesis.
Scottish as fuck.
I'm loving every bit of Michelle Gomez in this show. She makes me so happy.
Oh, she's amazing. She throws the bowl.
I thought it was a teacup.
Was it a teacup? That would make so much sense.
Would make sense. It may have been a teacup. I have to go back and look. You know what? Let me just check real quick. It is a teacup, guys.
Shout out to the man Todd for spotting that.
I mean, I kind of guessed rather than anything else, to be honest with you. But
There's no point being humble now.
Humble Todd.
But yeah, the fact that Rita has complete control over her powers when she's not held back by her anxiety.
And how excited were we all when this happened?
The effects are so good.
yep.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
The noise and just like how quick it is, like,
And how happy we feel for Rita when she says, no, it felt good to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, it feels good because subconsciously, somewhere in there, she knows she's never been able to do it until now. But without all of her neuroses, you know, none of the nasty memories about her mother, the mental block that Flex Mentalo hilariously tried to clear in season 2, it's all gone. All Gonzo Washington.
so happy for
And
her.
she gets the stamp. Boom.
Not a weapon.
I like how she's obviously, Laura DeMille's job is for recruiting metas. There are two things: weapon or not a weapon. That's it.
It's like wank, good guy.
Wank, wank, good guy. Wank, good guy.
We're hitting all the Scottish references.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. So she later Rita gets employed in the mailroom alongside Holly, and Holly is giving her all the script about Gizmo's do dash and watch it. So that's it.
I get
fucking
so
love
excited
Holly.
when we saw Holly. I was like, oh shit.
She's so great. Shout out to Anita Calathara, friend of this show.
Friend of the show, Twitter friend,
Nice.
our best pal.
Holly's lovely. I'm all about Holly. She's great. And I'm enjoying the chemistry between the two of them here. And Rita just going wild with the bendy arms.
Yeah.
And then Holly decides, we'll call you Bendy.
She gets a wee fan club going as well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Rita's asking about that officious Laura DeMille, and then Holly has to tell her, she saved us, Bendy.
I stand corrected.
I'm enjoying Holly's mockneyisms, I'm sorry. Once Rita's getting in about being a proper job's worth, innit? That's when Holly points out, you've got a fan club. Yeah, great moment. Happy Rita. Part of me is like, I don't like Rita being separated from the rest of the characters, but at the same time, happy Rita.
Yeah.
Let her be happy.
Yeah.
So good. She's found a fam. So later, she goes to the canteen and gets a bit of a shock.
Yep.
But I do enjoy the way she walks into the canteen, assumes she can sit anywhere, and announces herself with, oh, hello, it's me.
Because she's got a fan club. And if there's one thing Rita Farr, even probably subconsciously, knows, it's dealing with having a fan club.
Yep.
Michelle Gomez's performance here was she's like trying to warn Rita with her eyes.
Ixnay on the sitting down like.
And that's when we get our old pal Lloyd Jefferson turns up and guides Rita to where she should be, in the sub-canteen in the basement.
Yep.
Now, interesting note here. A woman remarks, one of the bureau agents remarks, freaks as they walk on. And the woman who says that's a black woman. And if you look around that room, it's a very mixed race room. And I just found it an interesting note that the Bureau of Normalcy in 1917 is quite far ahead in its employment. Yeah, and it's employment philosophy, but it's at the expense of metahumans.
Oh yeah, it's like they find a new segregation.
Right, exactly.
It's like, oh, we're fine, it's them.
But it is quite it's another area where the show is like, just a very simple moment like that, it's still doing quite trenchant social commentary there.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that out of my TV shows, thanks, SJWs.
Hashtag go woke, go broke.
I don't like it when shows I watch get political.
Anyway, I'm going to go back to reading X-Men, etc. There is always that element of, you know, there are people in every marginalised group, there are always people who are, you know, you get your Candace Owenses of the world,
Oh, one of the
you
good
know what
ones.
I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what this is channeling here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we finally get to meet the Sisterhood properly down in the basement, and what can you say about PIFFLE-PAFFLE?
I've never fallen in love with a group of characters this
Since
fast
Doom
since
Patrol.
Doom, I was gonna say, since fucking Doom Patrol. I would watch a Sisterhood of Dada TV show.
Fuck yes.
For real. I actually, on our Twitter account, I retweeted one of Anita Calathara's posts with the comment, we can't wait for the spin-off show. And Anita Calathara retweeted and went, I would totally be up for that. And I was like, I would watch the shit out of that. There's so much great stuff with these characters, so much great potential. You could easily make a full season of a TV show about their adventures.
The wacky hijinks with them and Monsieur Mala and the Brain trying to scupper their plans. Yeah, I'm into it.
There's something else here. I'm just gonna stoke the flames of your ego for a second here, Craig, if you don't mind. There's a lot of stuff they're talking about Dada in this and the next episode where it really echoed what you were talking about last episode about Dada. Like, most people feel it's just like a sort of it's a passing thing, it's a fad, and then there are those people who believe like deep ingrained in their hearts this is a way to change the world. And
I made that same note that there is that. I thought it was really clever. They have that conversation literally take place in this episode. It's really great. They really know their stuff, these writers.
Yes, they Dada do.
That stings,
But yeah, so everything that happens here with the Sisterhood of Dada, including previously unseen member Malcolm.
Yes.
Right, now we have to talk about Malcolm. We didn't mention him last episode because he wasn't here. Now, this is also a character for Grant Morrison's run.
Oh.
He had Grant Morrison all over him, yes.
He's a wee bit different, but only in the sense that the way he looks is basically sort of the same. In the comics, his entire torso is basically just a cage. So they've changed it a wee bit to make it a bit more romantic. But this obviously this love story with Rita is not something that happens in the comics. That's something they've written here for the show, and I think it works. But the character in Grant Morrison's run is like this, only passingly. Like, the similarities are slim. In the comics, his name is Malcolm, but he's known as Agent ! And rather than just actual invisibility,
Grant Morrison.
Rather than run-of-the-mill invisibility, his ability in the comics is he literally just can't be noticed. So it's not that he can turn invisible, it's just that people don't notice him.
It's like the living embodiment of that meme in the corner. Like.
Right, aye, exactly. And his catchphrase is he's the man who comes as no surprise. So they've toned down some of the zaniness for this character and they've made him a bit more romantic. And they've given him this backstory about having fought in the Battle of Verdun.
I love that how little actual backstory the show decides he needs, though, because it's like, I traded my heart for a canary. Like, okay, cool. That's all you need to know.
End of. Wait, traded with who? Yeah, there's no explanation needed. I really enjoy this actor who's playing him. He's very charming, and him and April Bowlby do have a good chemistry. So yeah, it's nicely done. I'm really enjoying the stuff they've done there. He's got a natural melancholy about him as well.
Yeah, it's not him, but initially I thought he was the guy that played Howard Stark in the Agent Carter series, but it wasn't.
Oh, I can see that, yeah. But I guess we have to mention it now, and it's confirmed it's for certain in the following episode, but this confirms for us who it was in the afterlife.
He's Melty Man.
He is Melty Man in the afterlife, as we called him.
When he put that mask on for the first time, I was just like, oh, shit!
Yeah. So, yeah, that's who that was. Whole lot to say about that, but we'll get to that in the next episode. So yeah, that's us got up to speed with the Sisterhood of Dada. So Rita continues being a job's worth in the mailroom. She stops now and again to look at the docket for this guy, Niles Calder.
Has a wee sniff.
He's partly on assignment. Has a wee sniff of his coat. Oh, Rita, you weirdo. Laura comes in and says, what is it about Niles Calder? And Rita's not sure, doesn't remember. Laura asks if her body elephant has recalled anything but her previous life yet. Computer says no. And so Laura tells her that this other thing you had written down in your note about the Sisterhood of Dada, I might know what that is. And so that's when the fog forms, and basically Shelley takes them to the place that's effectively inside Shelley, which is the Dada party pad.
Yeah.
What can we say about this whole sequence? Because it's amazing. It is absolutely incredible. Do you know what's funny? This is only the second episode that we've been in these characters' company, and it's really only the first one that we've got to know these characters. And yet, within the space of this whole sequence, I felt every bit as much affection for them as I did for our very own Doom Patrol within the first couple of episodes of this show.
No, absolutely, this show does that. I did it with Gargoyles as well.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yes!
So quickly you just learn to love these characters, and every one of them is so unique.
It's a fantastic collection of characters, and they're all Grant Morrison creations, obviously.
No.
Each of them has been tweaked slightly to fit in with the aesthetic of the show, and I just think all of the little choices they make are just perfect. Like with Sachiko, for example, aka the Quiz, like in the comics she's very different to this. I mean, the concept is the same, but she's never really human in the comics. She's really just a figure of, okay, that is ludicrous. But here we actually get to know who she is as a human being. One of the things I really like here is her whole germophobia is not even mentioned. Like, we're just the viewer just has to infer this for themselves. Like, nobody says, "Oh, don't mind Sachiko. She just has a thing about germs." It's just not mentioned.
She's just wearing a mask, and that's it. Like,
yeah. So they've all been tweaked in a sort of romantic angle, and I'm quite enjoying the way the show has done that. They've taken these zany Grant Morrison creations, just added a layer of melancholy romance to them, which is going to pay absolute dividends in the coming episodes.
Yeah. You know what? Even the way Laura DeMille changes as soon as she comes in.
Right.
what happened to that uptight? Like, oh, that bitch is off the clock.
Yeah.
Bitches
so
off the
good.
clock. I made a note about that, actually, whether this is really just this show's version of Madame Rouge having a split personality, because I don't feel like they're going to do that now in the show. I feel like they would have revealed it by now.
It definitely seems more along the lines of she was leading a double life where she was undercover, basically, and then she obviously goes full kind of asshole.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
guilt.
the angle they're going with.
Yeah.
And I think maybe arguably as her memory returns, it might manifest as more of a split personality. But I think it's that kind of idea rather than her being that kind of like two completely different personas warring against each other. The thing that I'm curious about is, in the comics, Laura DeMille and Niles Calder have had a romantic past. And Laura DeMille is deeply in love with Niles Calder. I'm wondering if they're going to touch on that in the show.
I think it could still be a thing, because when she's sniffing his coat and she catches her doing
Yes.
it, there's maybe that's the kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Like, it's just not mentioned yet.
We know from Niles' letter that they have tangled.
Yeah.
So, does Niles' anger come from a sense of betrayal, I guess, is the question. I feel like it could be. I mean, Niles was a piece of shit himself, though. But this show is complicated.
But see what you were saying there about how, like, we were talking about it in the last episode as well with Gargoyles, but the barest meeting of the characters and you're already completely head over heels in love with them. What the fuck are DC thinking, not having the people behind Doom Patrol do all the DC shit? Like, they clearly have like a grasp on these oddball, zany, off-the-wall characters, and Cyborg, right? So you've got like a pure mainstream one there. Get them to write the next Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, whatever, Justice League, because...
I thought you were singing the Supergirl theme tune for a second there.
Stand back, Superman, Iceman, Spider-Man, Batman and Robin too.
Fuck a Batman and a Superman, gonna geese birds of prey too.
It's funny you say that though, Alan, because there's obviously this is like Greg Berlanti Productions as well, and Greg Berlanti does all the DC CW shows, so he's like responsible for basically the separate
Flash.
DC CW universe.
Yeah.
Supergirl, all that kind of stuff, and they were all really entertaining as well. So when Zack Snyder was kind of like shitting out kind of rubbish DC movies, I was going, why are they not letting Berlanti do the movies? And even more so now, because he's obviously got some hand to a certain degree in Doom Patrol as well. So the guy obviously knows his shit.
Yeah, it makes no fucking sense, man. Like, Supergirl, I only watched the first season or so, and it was fun. The Flash was fun. I stopped watching it because it was just like, oh, another speedster villain. Villain. It's like, get
Another
God,
Reverse
man.
Flash.
Yeah, like, fucking hell, man. Like, there's so many cool villains you could use. But, like, they were fun.
Yeah.
They were actually fucking fun. And then I just kind of, like, watched Justice League and all that, and my thoughts on these are plain, you know. Everyone knows. I fucking hate them. But it makes no sense to me.
No, I don't think we're ever going to achieve satisfaction there. I think we're doomed.
Patrol.
I mean, doomed Patrol. The people behind Birds of Prey, if they want to do everything instead, I'm fine with that too.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's get Margot Robbie to take over as the head of DC movies.
Into it.
Yeah. Margot Robbie cameo in season 4 of Doom Patrol, please, also.
These are my things!
As well, too.
Fuck off! Was anyone expecting a Lady Gaga needle drop in this episode?
Amazing.
I was not, but it was fucking amazing how well that worked.
Ma.
Yeah, where they're doing the sound poems from from chocolate to chalk.
Then Mountain to Poker Face.
I love every single one of these characters, and I will protect them with my life. But this is really the scene as well, and amongst all this crazy shit, this is also the scene where Rita and Malcolm make their connection, and where Malcolm explains I say explains how he ended up with a canary in his chest. And then Rita gives him a paperclip, which will come back later. Yeah, there's just so much nice stuff going on in here.
Yeah.
And I know we say this about the show quite a lot, but this was another one of those moments where this is another team of just absolute fucking freakballs I really want to hang out with. I want to be in that party. I want to sit in that room. And I know even if I sit and don't want to join in, they won't care.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine.
You could sit off in the corner like Malcolm.
I won't be judged.
Agent exclamation mark.
So we start to see the seeds of rebellion, though, among the Sisterhood of Dada and the formation of what it looks like they're going to become. The gunpowder is lit by Rita.
Yeah.
Yes, it does seem that way. So they're having their snooze again. So cozy. I wish I was curried in there. Although I have to say, Michelle Gomez in this scene looking like a whole goddamn meal, by the way. But that's a whole other thing.
Am I thirsty? Am I thirsty? If you're so thirsty, why don't you just get up and get yourself a glass of water, huh?
Rita can't remember what her old life was, but she has this intrinsic, unconscious feeling that she says happiness was never as easy as you make it seem. And Laura has to explain, well, it isn't that easy. And she has the phrase where she says, this is their protest, a life well lived. And I felt that in my soul, I have to be honest. God bless these weirdos. But Laura also seems to look on Holly and Sachiko as they're over at the easel, drawing what I guess are going to be plans of some kind.
I thought it was the painting that everybody gets stuck in season 1.
Now, refresh my memory, in season 1, is it described as being that? Because that is what it is in the comics, but I couldn't remember whether in the show they actually said that was the origin of the painting.
No, I don't think they did. It was just when you saw it in the background, it was like right away. I was like, "Oh, that's."
It would make sense if it was, yeah.
Rita and fucking Niles of this big circular.
Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah, it could very well be. But Laura also has this sort of very doubtful, kind of semi-pitying thing that she says about Holly and Sachiko and their belief that Dada can change the world. Laura's kind of saying, "No, that's not reality. They can live Dada in as much as they can live it here, but it's not going to change the world." And Lloyd says something here that did hit me as well. He says, not everyone can afford to take that kind of risk. Bear in mind, this is 1917, and not only are these a group of metahumans, but you've got a black man, you've got an Asian woman, well, 2 Asian women, in fact. I felt it a great deal when Lloyd said not everybody can take that risk. And what I found interesting about this, I think this is the first time that Rita has been used in this show as a kind of foil or a vehicle for commentary on her own privilege as a white woman. And it was quite interesting that even though she's a freak also, she and Laura are both freaks that could go out into the real world and not be noticed.
Passing.
Of course, at this point, Rita doesn't even know that Laura is a metahuman. So there's that aspect as well. But going by what we know about them after watching 7 episodes, Rita and Laura consider this conversation in the context of, they could easily walk away from this if they wanted and just hide and never be detected in amongst human society. There's nothing particularly that marks them as being metahuman, whereas the others not so much.
Laura's got that Scottish accent, so she's not really going to be like,
right, there is that. Right, so later we get another canteen scene. Somebody shouts a disparaging comment at Holly, and Rita decides she's had enough. So she insists on sitting where she's not supposed to shit. Shitting where she's not supposed to shit. Lloyd gets a bit worried, says something to Rita like, you're off the chain here. And then Shelley is absolutely loving it. She says, in the best way possible. Sachiko says, now or never. What a cathartic moment this is. And that's when Rita begins to melt, and one of the bureau agents says, it's so ugly I can't look away.
Yeah, while watching and eating his sandwich.
Yeah.
Great shit. And then that's where we get this line from Malcolm saying, never let them see you sweat, which is what he said to her in the afterlife. And then we get a whole load of PIFFLE-PAFFLE, and Sachiko turning the agents into clowns.
Clown Patrol.
So good.
It's pretty fantastic. And they just start their nonsensical sound poem. But then a guard arrives. Guard Killjoy. I do enjoy, though, as the guard is walking them down the hallway, that they're still doing the dance. like just in protest, not knowing what's going to happen to them. That did touch my heart a wee bit. But of course, they need not worry because the guard reveals herself as Laura, and that's when Rita now realises that, of course, Laura is also a metahuman. And Laura says, "We are the Sisterhood of Dada, and I will stand by you till the day I die." I don't imagine that will ever come back to haunt anyone. I think that's that all seems above board.
Right. Self seems perfectly comulent. Pickled stockings, sell, buy, cut the piss.
So later on, Rita is looking wistfully at the time machine, just hoping to remember something. And Malcolm tells her that he's thankful she's here regardless. And Rita is feeling that life finally makes sense here, and the only thing she knew was that previously it didn't. And as she muses that maybe she was here to save the Sisterhood, Malcolm says, "Well, your ship is built for one." But he has a great line here, and in any other situation this would be cheesy as fuck, and it is kind of cheesy. I really liked it when he said, "Maybe you're here to show us how to bend and stretch towards a better world." It's like, oh, Malcolm, you cheesy fuck.
You're definitely not here to unleash the apocalypse.
Then you have a classic almost kiss moment, kiss interrupted, starring Angelina Jolie. He reveals he's made a wee heart out of the paperclip, and she hangs it in the cage where his heart should be, and it's like, oh, you too.
Cute,
and he says, "I'll guard it with my life," which is the second time we've heard that sentiment in this episode. And that's it. That's our Rita story for this episode, episode 6.
I said it before, I'll say it again. Hard 9 5s out of 9. Absolutely incredible. This show just keeps knocking it out of the park. It's no other show creates characters who you so quickly fall in love with.
Nope.
It's magic.
Yeah, it is a kind of sorcery how they just keep throwing all these extreme aspects together and still come away creating a show that's one of the most affecting emotionally and psychologically things that you can ever watch. Yeah, every show is a banquet, every episode. And so for that reason, James, and to the shock of nobody, I am scoring this episode 9 5s out of 9.
I can't believe you said that.
Alan?
I think this show was chock, 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 chock full of Doom Patrol goodness. No parkies, nothing. Fucking loved it.
Eat shit, Parkinson's.
Fuck all the way off with your fucking Zack Snyder verse. Like, give me the Doom Patrol verse.
Well, I think that translates as top marks across the board.
Absolutely.
I just want to shout out April Bowlby in this episode. She gets so much to do here, and she's fucking great. We see so many dimensions to Rita in this episode, and it's not like this character wasn't already fleshed out, but Jesus, it's an interesting thing she's having to do with her performance, because obviously she's having to shed a lot of the old Rita, but there's things like I love that the fact the show is making it clear there's some things you just can't get rid of. So all her mannerisms and everything that are just innate, you know, you can't get rid of the Rita-ness. When she's getting very passionate about the Dada stuff, all that, you know, when she's becoming so like almost childlike in her elation about that stuff, it's like we don't get to see that from Rita very often, and it's just so fucking beautiful.
Yeah, she's really probably the most uptight member of the team, like for nearly 2.5 seasons now, and she's starting to blossom like the beautiful flower that she is.
All she had to do was lose her memory.
Yeah, we love Rita. In any time.
Alright, so I think it may be time to hit the bar. What do you think, guys?
I think that's a great idea. I need to refresh my drink.
Yes. We'll be right back after these short messages. What y'all drinking, guys?
Well, it'll come as no surprise, but in honour of the Tron, not the Hamiltron, the other Tron.
You mean like
or
Agent
Hunt.
exclamation mark?
Yes, okay. It will come as no surprise, like Agent exclamation mark. I am drinking Slavery Apologists Green King's East Coast IPA. The
Once
good
again,
kind
we
of
have to
slavery
remind
apologists.
everyone it's the good kind of slavery apologists. They apologise for the role in slavery.
Any day now they're going to respond to that request for sponsorship.
I don't know how it can go wrong. Why they're not at our door with a battering ram for this sponsorship deal, with a slogan like this. Get with the programme.
Might be at a door with a battering ram for a libel case, but if you're listening, Green King, big fan. What about you, Craig? What are you drinking this evening?
I, James, now you get ready for this. Gild your loins. I am also drinking Slavery Apologist Special.
The
East
good
Coast
kind.
IPA.
Outstanding. 2 for 2 so far.
Oh, what would happen if we got a full house? Slanja.
Chin chin.
Alan, what are you drinking this evening?
I am also drinking Slavery Apology. Nah, I'm drinking water.
Boo.
I know. Folk think that I'm the drunk one on this show, but apparently, no.
Take that, expectations.
This has been a tale of the unexpected. That's a hip reference to a long-running late 1970s/80s UK anthology drama series. Look it up.
Amazing. Roll Dow shit.
A leg of lamb.
That's the best story. I love that one.
Timeless.
Eats the evidence. So good.
Amazing. Before we get on to Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 7, don't know, anything else been catching anyone's attention recently in terms of other non-Doom Patrol TV or anything?
I have to throw up my hands and say, so last time we talked, I've been really busy with work and I've hardly had time to do anything else, so I don't think I do. This might be a first.
How about you, Alan? I mean, I know I've got a few I've been watching. How about you?
I have been watching Sex Education. I don't know if I mentioned that the last time.
Wait a minute. You've
Wait.
been watching stuff. I've been watching stuff.
Is this an episode of
fSobrieTV,
the podcast in which we discuss all things TV, aside from the main TV thing that we're currently discussing as the main theme of our current episode?
I think it might be.
Cue
Cue the music.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of fSobrieTV, the podcast in which we discuss TV, as in more TV.
Not the TV we're talking about in the main part of the show, but additional TV we've been watching. TV that doesn't merit its own podcast episode. So, Alan, you were saying you've been watching Gillian Anderson vehicle Sex Education.
Of course, that's how you would describe it.
I have been, yes, and absolutely loving it. It's such a wholesome show for a program about sex education. Like, our American cousins maybe not be aware of it. I don't know, like, if it's a big thing in America.
No, it is,
whatever,
it is, judging from Twitter, quite a big thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Good,
yeah.
good. I just thought with their kind of puritanical kind of overall thing, like, it's got the word sex in it, and it's not Sex in the City, so it might not be a big thing over there.
I've not watched any of this show yet, but we've actually talked about it in this podcast before, me and James did, because I had it on a list of shows I wanted to watch, and that was like nearly a year ago, and I just haven't got around to it. But there's two things I know about this show. One is that it's a British show that apparently is set in an American high school for some reason in Wales. And I love that idea. I love that combination of bizarre elements, so that has made me quite interested. But the other thing I know about it is that the third season, Dua Saleh joins the cast. Because I love Dua Saleh. Their music is amazing.
I watched the first episode and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I intend to watch more of it.
It's so good. So many times where you're expecting it to go one way and it totally swerves the other way, and it's always the right decision. It's so fucking good. Like, one of my favourite shows. It's not Doom Patrol, Twin Peaks or Mr. Robot good, but it's second tier level.
But what is?
Yeah, exactly. They're fucking, like, in their own... It's a different sport with them, right? Like, but it's up there with, like, your other favourite shows out with... The Holy Trinity.
Sex Education, I really enjoyed. I will watch Gillian Anderson in anything, as evidenced by me watching the entirety of Season 3 of The Fall, where I should have just fucking stopped watching it at the end of Season 2, back when it was good.
The first two seasons are definitely the best, right?
If it's Gillian Anderson and your granny on bongos, it's The Fall.
Full of surprises.
There was two reasons I watched all of Season 3 of The Fall. One was because Gillian Anderson's in it, and spoiler alert for The Fall Season 3, if you're watching it, you don't want to hear anything.
It sucks.
I just wanted to hear Gillian Anderson say, "Fetch the bolt cutters." That's all I needed to hear.
Fetch the bolt cutters.
But she's great in Sex Education. She's so good at comedy. I always find Gillian Anderson doing her English accent funny, just even though... Like the fact that she can flip
Yep.
between.
She played Margaret Thatcher recently, am I right? Is that a thing that happened?
Oh yeah, sorry, that just undermines my previous statement of I'll watch her in anything. I ain't watching Gillian Anderson being Thatcher.
I would give you too many complex feelings, one imagines.
There's some things I just won't masturbate to.
I admire you for having the constitution to say I'm not even going to try.
I might cut that out.
Is this an episode of fSobrieTV? Seen my Michelle Gomez comment earlier and now this.
4, not off.
Did fucking Frankie Boyle write this episode?
I actually think we show a lot of restraint in that regard most of the time, so, you know. Well, in the edited versions, anyway.
Speaking of Frankie Boyle, I meant to mention last time, I went to see Frankie Boyle live at the Glee Club in Glasgow.
Same. Same.
Is this an episode of Stand-Up-ity?
But he was great. Me and Sarah happened to be sitting in the second row with no one in front of us, and I was like, oh no, I've seen Frankie Boyle stand-up shows before where he rips the audience at the start, and luckily because he was like trying out stuff for New World Order, so he was just up on stage and just trying stuff out, but it was great. It was so casual.
Yeah.
I was in fucking tears for like 35 minutes solidly. It was brilliant. I don't know if he's still doing them because the show started.
He shredded a woman in the audience who was constantly talking, and it was brutal, man, brutal. Like, she had it coming, like, no question. But I think it is still going. Like,
I think it's through November as well, because New World Order started airing, but I think it's still going. If it's still on by the time this comes out, go see it. But my favourite thing about going to see Frankie Boyle is that it was me and Sarah's delayed 11th year anniversary night out.
You saying that, yeah.
So after going to see Frankie Boyle, we went to Nanakusa, which is a Japanese restaurant in Glasgow, and I tweeted, just went to see Frankie Boyle, and now I'm at Nanakusa. What is this, my birthday? Because I go to Nanakusa on my birthday most years, other than when it was closed for a pandemic. And one of my pals on Twitter said, happy birthday, pal. And I was like, oh no, it's not actually my birthday, but it's me and Sarah's anniversary. At which point, Frankie fucking Boyle tweeted happy anniversary at us.
I saw that.
I was like, what?
Pretty good.
he's not a monster. There you go.
Shout out to Frankie Boyle. Good guy.
Fucking legend.
Anyway, sorry, Alan.
What else? I started watching Reservation Dogs on Craig's recommendation.
Yep.
Recommendation Dogs.
Hey-o. And you have no reservations about it?
Indeed not, dog.
I just went through that process you did earlier and I regretted the joke as soon as I said it.
I mean, that's like pretty much where I live almost daily. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's listeners to the show will not be surprised. Constantly with my foot hovering somewhere about my mouth. Like, that's which makes it awkward to walk and drive, but you know, I manage. Double bag.
I've been watching some things.
What have you been watching?
So I finished Squid Game.
Just for the listeners' benefit, in case they didn't hear earlier, I did talk about Reservation Dogs quite a bit in previous episodes.
Yeah, go check those episodes out. Check that out. They're available for free. I finished watching Squid Game, which amazing. So I decided to watch another Korean show on Netflix that started. I think 4 episodes in. It's a show called Sweet Home, and it is absolutely fucking bananas. And it is 100% going to make my top 10 TV shows of the year.
Cool.
Just got to add it onto my list just now.
You've got the Korean wackiness. I've got the Mexican wackiness. Alan, what are you bringing to this conversation when we get to listing our favourite TV shows of the year?
Yes.
It's based on a Korean comic. It's about an apocalyptic event, a virus that turns people into monsters, and it's a group of survivors inside a
I've seen the
apartment
first few episodes of this.
It's fucking... it's fucked up,
It's
isn't it?
fucking berserk, man. I think I'm on episode 3. I think I've seen the first 2. I just went to add it onto my list there when you mentioned it, and I was like, oh no, I've started this. It's fucking crazy. Like, what? It's like Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And you ever see that Japanese film House?
Yes, Hausu.
Absolutely bonkers, right? Like, this is kind of another level and gory as well. It's fucking great. Sorry, carry on, James.
Yeah,
I
it's
just get
totally
excited there.
It has one downside, and that's that the soundtrack has one Western song on it that is used in every single episode of the show so far, which is Warriors by Imagine Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever there's a fight scene, that song plays.
Jesus, that's weird. Is that the only song they could afford? It's that we better just keep using it.
I feel like they spent their music budget on the gross out monster effects, but
money well spent there.
yeah, it's funny. It's great. I've also been watching a new cartoon show on Netflix called Inside Job, because it stars our pal Lizzie Kaplan and Christian Slater, Mr. Robot himself. It's about basically a branch of the government that work for the shadow government, and they run all the conspiracies in the world.
Does Alex Jones consider this show a documentary?
Probably. And it's all right.
Venezuela!
It's okay. It's not the best thing I've ever seen. I guess I expected more because of the cast, but it's got big kind of try-hard wannabe Rick and Morty energy at times, but but me and Sarah sat through like 5 episodes of it in quick succession without wanting to switch it off, and I think there's 10 episodes in the season. And the third thing, also a cartoon that I've been watching, also on HBO Max, which we all have, is season 4 of Young Justice, subtitled Young Justice Phantoms. There's 3 episodes of it now.
I did not know that was out.
Yeah.
How is it?
It is as good as it has no right to be, as Young Justice always is.
I get worried for a second there. I thought you were like going to tell me it was shite just the way you started, but no, that's good.
Season 4 starts with a murder mystery on Mars. And it just flies in, just like 2-footed, into social commentary, into apartheid.
Sounds too woke for me.
It's woke as a fuck, and it's brilliant, and I highly recommend it. Young Justice is brilliant. I highly recommend Young Justice to anyone if you've not seen it. I think it's all on HBO. I should know this because I've got HBO Max. I think it's all on HBO Max.
I always forget my login for HBO Max, so like I can never check that thing. But
I'll check it later. That's all the TVs I've been watching, other than Doom Patrol, obviously.
That's a lot of TVs.
Just before we wrap this up, just want to say a quick shout out to Dallas, Texas. 5 listeners in Dallas, Texas, as it turns out, for our last episode. So if you're one of those listeners in Dallas, Texas, yeehaw. Thanks
You're
for
rootin'
listening.
tootin'. Unless it turns out to be a dream, a la the death of Bobby Ewing. That was a hip reference to 1980s stalwart soap opera Dallas for you kids.
Craig wakes up, goes to the toilet, and there I am in the shower.
And I think that just about wraps it up for another episode of fSobrieTV.
Toodle pep.
Good ep. Also, sorry, before we carry on, we're about to talk more Doom Patrol, and if you came to this podcast from the DC Doom Patrol subreddit, thanks for not being that cunt that said he was going to get me banned for promoting the podcast on the DC Doom Patrol subreddit, because fuck that guy, and fuck anyone that was downvoting.
My favourite thing about that guy was that his idea of spam in a Doom Patrol specific Reddit is a Doom Patrol podcast. Which, I don't know, somebody's going to need to explain that to me.
Just to go on a quick side thing here, not that it bothered me or anything, but someone else commented, why is this spam? It's about Doom Patrol in a Doom Patrol subreddit. And the guy responded with, but they also talk about other things. And I'm like, did you listen to the show? Because thanks.
Oh, you would not know that unless you listened to the show. Thanks for the download, dickhead.
Fuck you very much, motherfucker.
Keeping the numbers up.
Wow, you know what the internet needs? Fewer people.
This internet would be great if it wasn't for the fucking users, to paraphrase Kevin Smith.
Random.
Alright, let's talk more Doom Patrol. That's what we're all here for, supposedly.
Season 3, Episode 7.
Bird Patrol. It was written by Ezra Clayton Daniels, and it was directed once again by our old Hollyoaks pal, Omar Maddah. Fun note about Ezra Clayton Daniels, the writer of this episode. This is his first ever thing he's written for television. Or if not the first thing he's written for television, it's the first thing that's made it to the screen that he's written for television.
Now, before you talk about this, is this the guy that tweeted that thing that I saw?
Yes, and I'm just about to read out the tweet because I actually found it quite a heartwarming and so typical of Doom Patrol kind of moment. I'll read it out. It says, I'm 42 years old. 2 years ago, I didn't know where my next paycheck was coming from. Today, my very first episode of TV premiered on HBO Max. and it's shared by the entire Doom Patrol cast, and obviously all the fans have shared it, and it's like, man, it can happen, I guess.
Yep, I saw it get, I think, a quote tweeted by Shoshana Shachi.
Yes, yeah. So there you go. Good on you, Ezra. Nice one.
Yep.
And I have to
Well
say,
done,
this
mate.
episode is astoundingly well written.
His first episode of television ever put on is a 9 5s out of 9 episode. Well done.
Prick.
Where do you get off with the talent, mate? But it's a solidly written episode. Everything it needs to do, it does with panache. All the characters are present and correct, written brilliantly. It's structured really well. It's like, fuck me, this is actually a solid episode of TV. So, yeah,
And the
good
man
on
has
him.
obviously researched his Scottishisms.
Yes. So on that note, let's get into it, shall we? Very first thing we see is that we're in the midst of the fog, and Holly is welding this giant bird cage. No explanation about that yet. And Lloyd climbs up on the top and does him a cyclone. Holly gets very excited and laughs and shouts the eternal flagellation. And the sound design in this scene was so good. Like just the really frenetic wind sounds with that score. Once again, shout out Glenn Mansell and Kevin Kiner. They're really top drawer stuff here. But this really reminded me of when Philip Glass and Ornette Coleman got together in the early 90s. It had that sort of vibe about it.
It was Moira.
It just had a real cacophonic. I wanted to be in a venue where that was played live at the highest possible volume and just be standing right up next to the. Right, remember the Archies? Like, see, being right at the front of the Archies when you're right next to the big speakers, when like the boredoms were playing. When I heard this score, I was like, I want to be right next to that speaker as this is being played, just for it to obliterate my every cell.
I have not heard the Philip Glass and Ornette Coleman, and I'm intrigued because that sounds like it should not work at all.
The other thing it also reminded me of is when Howard Shore did the soundtrack for David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, and it also featured Ornette Coleman.
Does it? Oh, fuck, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and there's some cacophonic moments in there. I'm just like, I want to hear that played as loud as possible. But yeah, that's the feels this gave me. But proper apocalyptic, but proper joyous at the same time. I also want to make a shout out here to whoever's designing Holly's outfits, because they're fucking incredible. And that character in the comics always had a really great specific look, but you only ever saw the one costume, and none of the outfits we've seen have been the exact costume, but they're in the spirit of it. Like, she was always very colourful, and it was always kind of trousers and like multicoloured all over, you know, and the big boots and everything. So the spirit of it is absolutely correct, and just to see this stuff on screen is just so great. So after this is bringing these eternal flagellation flyers into a reality.
Oh, yep.
The first person to receive one is a postnatal Larry trainer.
Vomiting up a pupa.
Ah, bless you, Larry. Bombs up a whole pupa and then passes out.
Where was Gina Davis when this thing appeared?
Out getting a cheeseburger. Vic, meanwhile, meets up with Dr. Chalmers. I really like this scene. I like this character, Dr. Chalmers, because before we saw this, I don't know about you guys, but in the previous episode, some of the things I was thinking of was, is this going to be some kind of, it's a trap situation where there's going to be some sort of machinations behind the scene, that this was to trap Vic in some way.
Turns out she's just a really wholesome character.
Yeah, 100% wholesome and 100% very sympathetic to Vic. And I love her backstory that she gives here, that she left Star post 9/11 because Star, in that reactionary atmosphere, became much more focused on weapons. And it's wee touches like this in this show that I'm like, oh god, that is good writing. That's good stuff.
It places the DC continuity of this show in kind of a real context as well, because I'm not sure if comics dealt with stuff like 9/11.
Oh, dude, do you not know? Like,
I think we all have to take a moment to remember just how comics commemorated 9/11 and the immediate aftermath
the
of
Marvel
9/11.
one especially was fucking
Do you not
horrendous.
remember Doctor Doom
Oh,
crying?
man.
No.
Oh.
I was not into comics at that point.
Okay,
so.
I'm going to have to put a link in these episode notes because, yeah, both of the big two went absolutely unashamedly fucking awful.
One solitary tear, like, rolling down his mask. Doctor Doom, who hasn't murdered anybody at all, ever.
Has never tried to take over the world through
Was
violence.
Doctor Doom crying out of jealousy?
That's the least of it. There was a ton of horrible reactionary bullshit that happened in the immediate aftermath from the big two. They were churning out shit. And I mean shit.
Idea.
Oh, it's horrific, dude.
I thought you were kidding on when you were saying, like, I don't know if they touched it.
I did as well, because
he
it is...
actually doesn't know. Like,
no, it is. It has,
lucky you.
It has become iconic for all the wrong reasons.
I don't understand how they would incorporate that, because surely in their universes, they're like, oh no, there are planes flying towards the World Trade Center. Superman will stop it.
Right, that was kind of the things that a lot of comedians were saying at the time about it. It's like, where were all the superheroes that day? It's like, aren't your superheroes a bit shit? But yeah, it was cringe. Maximum cringe.
Oh, well.
The eternal cringeation. So anyway, Dr. Chalmers says that she was surprised that Silas chose this for Vic, and goes on to tell him that all the tech will have to be removed. I made a note here. She specifies that the deconstruction of most of his tech is all down to nanotech, so really it's mainly down to code. And I thought to myself, that seems like a big fucking weakness. 'Cause surely if anybody can hack into Cyborg, then he's sort of fucked, isn't he? If he ever goes up against Elliot Alderson, he's doomed, Patrol.
I liked the line about anything that requires more energy than a burrito.
Yes. And so she's trying to make sure that he's absolutely sure he wants to do this, and I do like the dialogue here where she is making it clear that, you know, this would be a traumatic process, and you would a very different perspective on yourself afterwards. You would no longer be who you are now. You would also no longer be anyone you've been before, because you can't go back to who you were pre-cyborg. And it's this whole idea that, which is a real thing, and when people go through life-changing surgeries, it is, and you hear people talking about this, it really makes them question their own sense of identity. Yeah, there's some deep stuff going on there, but Vic says, my mum would want this, which is... But Dr. Chalmers encourages him to talk to a loved one, and it was at that moment I was like, we're going to see Ronnie this episode, yep. Bring on the Ronnie. So we whisk back to Doom Manor.
Record store day at Doom Manor.
Cliff in his requiem for Limmy's plasterer mode. Turns out he's sold all of Jane's records.
There goes all our My Chemical Romance albums.
Jane is freaking out, and I like how Cliff has a classic "no you" moment here, where she says something weird's going on with you. Something weird's going on with you.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Jane starts joking, and she starts to vomit up another one of these eternal flagellation flyers. But I do like Cliff trying to reassure her, don't worry, I had this Heimlich course once. I mean, what is it he says exactly? For some reason he didn't.
He banged the instructor to
That's
pass.
it, I knew it was something like that, yeah. Classic Cliff. Cliff's shirt also changes, and Jane realises it's those Dada freaks. And that's where Laura comes down the stairs. One of my favourite lines of the episode, she calls Cliff a guileless golem. And insists they seal the doors, seal the windows, and the motherfucking fireplaces. Oh, amazing. So they're kind of trying to ignore Laura, and Laura's like at the window kind of muttering to herself. And so they carry on their argument. That's when Cliff says the thing about the workout tapes, and that's when Flit takes over, says, you got rid of my Cher workout tapes?
When we were talking earlier about in the previous episode when she changes characters and they used to do the thing with the face, and it's like you don't need that anymore. In this one, obviously, there's like the little touch of like, the makeup and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like they didn't even need that. It's so clearly a different character. That was
I mean, they wouldn't need it, but it seems it's cool that the character, certainly Flit, it's cool to see her 80s look. It's always enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
But takes Cliff for a surprise visit to Clara. It's like, oh yeah, surprise, this was totally planned, yay.
I like how Flit's response is just get the fuck out of the house. Dump him somewhere. Be someone else's problem for a while.
And Cliff trying to explain to Clara that, quote, oh, the parquet, it's all taken care of.
Get steady as a rock.
The parquet. Great shit. So, meanwhile, in 1949, so a whole 30 odd years has passed.
Yeah.
In this Rita story, which, holy donuts. So Laura is interviewing a young man named Wally Sage. Now, guys, do you know who Wally Sage is? It's not going to surprise you too much to learn he's a Grant Morrison character. Wally Sage is essentially the creator of Flex Mentallo.
Do you know, when he was like kind of demonstrating his powers, that was my fucking thought.
Yes.
Like I was like,
Yeah.
that's a Flex Mentallo reference, right? So
This was another jump out my seat moment for me because, first of all, when he said his name, I was like, oh, fucking hell, I can't believe they're bringing him in. And then when I saw what was in front of, I was like, what? To give you just a brief primer, back in Grant Morrison's run, Wally Sage is a depressed advertising guy. Like he's just somebody that creates advertisements. He lives a very depressed life, but he has this power of like reality alteration, and it turns out he can actually bring life to the things he draws. And so Flex Mentallo is actually created by Wally Sage, and he's based on one of the old Charles Atlas advertisements. That's what he looks at, and it's because when he was a kid growing up, those Charles Atlas advertisements in comic books used to give him some sort of comfort that he just looked at the guy and thought, oh, that's somebody I would want to look out for me, kind of thing. And so Flex Mentallo is born. So Wally Sage in this scene, having him here, is fucking wild, man. And I really like to touch when he says, oh, but I'm here for the marketing position. I was like, you know what you're doing, writers. You know what you're doing. But in the comics, of course, he's a contemporary character. He's not in the 1940s, so they're playing around with that a bit.
if you can do it this well, it's absolutely allowed.
Yeah,
right?
totally. I mean, it all works. Whether or not they're going to make it clear that he is the creator of Flex Mentallo in this universe, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, what's in front of him, if you look at it, it is basically a Flex Mentallo comic strip. So I think the inference seems to be that he's brought that in to show Laura that I can do this, meaning that I can do marketing. Because I think it's supposed to be an advert of some kind. But Laura's now saying to her, but what else can you do? I really enjoyed the touch that he takes the beach ball out of the comic strip, and if you look at the comic strip again, it's actually disappeared from the page, which was quite nice.
Yeah. She asks him, can you do that with artillery?
Right, and this is so depressing because, first of all, because it's Laura, and we're like, we've seen this aspect of Laura that was so likeable, and it's like, no.
It's like the reverse Iron Man, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's essentially doing the opposite of what Dr. Chalmers did post 9/11. After 2 world wars, she's decided it's time to buckle down and, protect, quote-unquote, our country, which is really depressing. But it's also depressing just in the sense that this is basically what happens, whenever any advancement is made anywhere, whether it's technological or otherwise, the first thing that people in power do is, well, how can we weaponize it? And so it's made much more clear to us in this episode that there are who knows how many metahumans now have been quote-unquote recruited by the Bureau of Normalcy to effectively just live their lives as weapons for the state.
But she's still protecting her friends at this point.
For now.
Yep.
So poor Wally gets designated a weapon, and out he goes. And Bendy, Bendy is aghast.
You've been designated a weapon.
I'm sorry to inform you, you're a weapon. For people outside Scotland that don't understand, saying somebody's a weapon is like saying they're a pure dick. A pure dick means a total dick. God, we have to keep explaining everything. have to keep translating the translation.
Out West Scotland.
Laura tries to explain to Bendy that she has to make difficult choices to keep the country safe. They say, "Oh, fuck you, Laura. Fuck you all the way."
1% chance.
And Bendy is telling her that the Sisterhood miss her, and don't you miss making art and all the rest of it. And Laura says she has a higher calling now. And I feel like this is part and parcel of the theme that's going on in this whole historical part of the narrative. Because we will see that the Sisterhood of Dada at this point are also realising, well, it's time we had a higher calling. It's some nice diametric juxtaposition there. I also made a note here that Laura's the reverse Gargoax, because Gargoax realised he was being played and decided enough is enough. I refuse to be corrupted anymore, whereas Laura's gone the opposite way.
Laura DeMille is Billy Boyd.
I had that exact same thought. Yes.
So Bendy slips an invitation into Laura's documents that she'll find later and sneaks out of the room. Meets up with Malcolm. They have a wee Broadway-esque dance in the corridor, which we'll later realise is them practising for their latest little art piece. These guards. I love the pantomime nature of these guards marching down the hall.
They should be singing Springtime for Hitler.
Yeah, but I mean, it's big Nazi energy. And the one guy looking back robotically and seeing them holding hands, it's like, Again, I know we keep saying it, but it's one of those things that show does so well, but it does things in such a cartoonish fashion, but it chooses those moments to do it in just the right places. Yeah, good shit. So let's catch up with present day Larry and Laura.
It's 11 o'clock.
You're loafing around on the floor. Larry has to explain how this thing came out of him, specifies which orifice, because Laura seems unsure.
This whole scene is gold, by the way. I had to rewind and watch this about 3 times.
Every line is fantastic. It's when Laura asks, have you been around any abnormal atmospheres?
I went to Costco for the first time.
Incredible. Laura informs him that this is obviously a space parasite, and Larry says, well, how do you know that? She says, what else would it be, you bampot? And you could not pick me up off the floor after that line. And I was at a point where I had to stop. I was like, I can't believe Michelle Gomez has just called somebody a bampot on this American show that I love. This is fantastic. And I did think to myself, I wonder how many people outside Scotland watching this show had to Google after what a bampot is.
Should you be unaware?
It's probably trending.
Bampot is basically like an idiot.
Yeah, an absolute dafty. It's also a colloquial expression. All of these things mean idiot, basically. So she tells him there's only one reasonable response to this.
When you expel a living 16-pound space parasite from your mouth, there's only one thing you can do.
Give it a name.
Name it.
It's Michelle Gomez's delivery of, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Barney!
Give it a name.
It's when she's, at the end of the scene when she's muttering away to herself as she walks away.
Don't give it a fucking name.
Fucking Barney!
Despite all of Michelle Gomez's amazing lines, and they are all absolutely amazing, I think my favourite delivery of that whole scene is just when Larry says, give it a name. Like, he genuinely is like, I don't fucking know. Like, burning it is the farthest thing from his mind.
This is a guy who lived with an alien inside him for decades. I mean, of course that's where his mind goes. Oh, fabulous. Anyway, doing the switcheroo on the mood slightly. Meanwhile, in the underground, poor wee Kay is crying in bed, and it turns out her bike has been stolen. And Jane suggests maybe somebody borrowed it, and Kay shouts at Jane, and I don't like it. I don't like Kay shouting angrily at Jane. This breaks my heart. She says, stop treating me like a stupid baby. I never want to go up again. I'm like, no.
The last couple episodes, Jane had been acting more like Kay, like she was more at peace. And now, through this episode, Kay starts to get more like Jane.
Well, that's a good call, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of aggression and a lot of kind of shouting and swearing. So I wonder if it's from having been up.
The first casualty of going up is becoming Jane, as Oliver Stone told us.
Yep, that's the quote, alright.
Yep. But yeah, it's real sad energy.
I don't like it. It's playing a goddamn glissando in my heartstrings, and I don't like it. Anyway, meanwhile, Cliff is having a good time. Rory's very relaxed around him, and Clara makes the comment
But
that...
it's your ice-cold touch.
Clara makes the comment that, oh, you're more and more like Grandpa RJ, which, of course, a comment Cliff does not appreciate. The party shakes return. I forget Clara's wife's name.
Mrs. Clara.
Mrs. Steele.
Mrs. Steele, yeah, I don't recall her name.
Yeah, but
No,
she
can't remember
clocks that Cliff is doing the shakies again. But Clara, trying to make the best out of a situation, she insists that they go out for a while. She wants to give Cliff the space to prove himself, which I really thought was sweet.
Here's the thing, right?
You gotta be fucking kidding.
They say we'll be gone 20, 30 minutes tops. And she leaves a credit card for emergencies
card.
for
Right,
20 minutes.
I did think that as well. What do you think's going to happen in half an hour?
It's America. Remember, nothing is free.
No, Dan, that's zoom in on the credit card.
Yeah, and this is where my heart really sunk. I was like, oh, Cliff, don't
Yeah.
do this, man.
I
Come
foresaw
on.
a tragedy.
What a falling off was a coming. So we get another interlude with Holly, and I really enjoy this industrial steam train foghorn. It's like something David Lynch would have come up with if he was directing the Joker movie. Or directed a Joker scheme episode from the Adam West Batman series.
She looks well happy with it as well.
Oh, she's so great. I love her, the actress's energy as well. She's so cool. Hashtag friend of the show. Shout out to Larry's beanie.
Oh,
I don't know why Larry has to wear a beanie,
It was fucking amazing.
but it's a nice touch.
It's supposed to be cold tonight. It's supposed to be really cold tonight.
This whole bit, oh man.
Adorable, man.
His paternal instincts kicking in after
Yeah.
he's just like had the final sort of severance with his son, you know.
Right, yep. Yeah, and
Right in the feelings.
doing his best. He's doing his best.
Everyone likes a PB&J.
3 times he goes back, but I like the fact he leaves the parasite there the first time and decides, I'm not going to give it any of that stuff. That's silly. But then gets about 10 yards down and goes, maybe just the PB&J. And then goes off again and thinks, maybe I'll give it the thermos. It's like, I love this step-by-step thought process. It's like, all right, fuck it, the scarf as well.
All that, though, and then the fog starts rolling in, and he's like, that can't be good, and then fucks off and leaves it.
Yeah. I don't think you're thinking straight, Larry.
To be fair, this is the guy that wrapped his dead friends in bandages and positioned them around a table. Maybe sometimes we give Larry a bit too much credit. He's a bit fucked.
Yeah, he's had 70 years of absolute fucking tragedy. Like, he's clearly not thinking right. Like,
Yeah.
When you get wrenched up to the far reaches of space for a Twin Peaks The Return bra moment, maybe the whole entire universe just looks different when you return.
There were moments in this episode, particularly, and the previous episode, though, where Matt Bomer's voice and Matthew Zuck's face, like, you'd see his mouth moving under the bandages.
Yeah.
The sync work was so good.
Yeah,
it was really
pretty
well
good.
done.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well, because it's not often... Well, I'm not really ever thinking about it, but I think because there was some really close-up shots of Matthew Zuck's, well, not his face, obviously, but his bandage-covered face, that they really made the effort there to make that work. It actually did work really well. Because even the previous episode as well, during his scene with Paul, there was some quite close-up shots of Matthew Zuck as well. Yeah, I was quite impressed with how well they made that work.
Yep.
And then we get the return of Ronnie. And I was stoked as a fuck. Not just because Ronnie was back, but we see her sitting looking as badass as fuck, like fucking Frank Castle, checking her ammo. I'm like, yes, what has she been up to? What kind of carnage has she been wreaking everywhere?
Just in some fucking, like, bombed out ruins of a building somewhere.
I've made it clear in this podcast before, but I'm 100% Team Ronnie, which is why I'm hoping that they're not going to sacrifice too much of what Ronnie's about in this season.
Apparently, clearly not, given what she says to Vic in this
This
scene.
is a really interesting conversation. There's a lot of interesting stuff goes on here. I like to be flirtatious Morse code.
Miss me.
And that's actually one of the cool things about these characters. I mean, season 2 got a lot of great mileage out of the fact that Joy Van Wade and Karen Obolom do have really good chemistry on screen. And even though they're not on screen here, like the two of them are shooting their scenes, you know, on entirely separate days probably. But that energy, it doesn't miss at all. It's still there. It's 100% there. So yeah, it was like just catching up from where they left off, but without some of the anger, which was nice. It was like a season 2 Ronnie and Vic moment. But they do have a deep conversation here. I really loved some of the dialogue in the scene, and it did go some way to assuaging some of my, if we want to go to Woodsy's worry corner that I mentioned in the previous episode, did go some way to assuaging some of that stuff. Not so much because of what Ronnie says, but because of what Vic says. Vic has some good lines here that I was like, oofed, did not expect that to come out of him. Because Ronnie is trying to say to him that not being Cyborg anymore is not necessarily the right thing to do. You can be you could be a more powerful force for change as Cyborg. And one of the things that Vic says in response is that if you're implying I have to use force to do it, then how does that make me any different from a cop? If all I'm trying to do is instill obedience in people. Which, like, I did not expect that line to come out of Vic's mouth. And
Yeah,
I was
the
like,
Boy
oofed.
Scout has woke, yeah.
Yeah.
ACAB, all cyborgs are bitchin.
Is that the episode title?
I think it may be.
But I also love Ronnie's reply. There's so much meat in this dialogue. Ronnie replies, said, but we don't want obedience, we just want justice. And I'm like, God damn, fucking dialogue is off the chain.
Yep, first time writer.
Right,
this guy,
indeed.
this
This is
fucking guy.
great shit. And there's also, I was thinking this earlier, but it is sort of in some ways, unless you believe the slash fic, it's a more romantic version of the Professor X Magneto situation, where you know it is that sort of avatar of the MLK Malcolm X situation, where Ronnie is very much in the Malcolm X role, and Vic is like in that later period MLK moment right now, where he's starting to realise that maybe he has to think about certain things differently while not fully coming on to Ronnie's side of things. So, yeah, there's some fucking great stuff in here. I really like Ronnie's line as well, after Vic says, I thought you'd be happy for me. I am trying to find a way to be happy. And she says, not all of us get to prioritise our happiness. And it's this idea that if you're actually going to be a hero, you have to make sacrifices.
Are you going to be cyborg, or are you going to be happy?
Do you want change or do you want happiness was another line as well. So, oof, god damn, this is good.
And it echoes what Frenzy said in the previous episode.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so they're definitely getting great meat and bones out of that stuff, and it's really making me... this whole scene really made me happy. I was like, this is exactly the Vic and Ronnie scene I didn't know I needed, but it's exactly what I needed.
Vic in particular, but a lot of the characters in this show, probably all the characters in this show to be fair, they all seem to be undergoing, like, you know, the classic hero's journey, but it's like the writers of this show have basically taken the hero's journey, ripped it up Dada style, and plastered it and been like, so it's still there, but they've kind of reinvented the whole idea, but you can still see that kind of narrative journey for each character, and
that's a good call. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yep. Yeah. Hashtag Team Ronnie. Anyway, Cliff and Rhodey are having an episode of Dad and Dumber.
Top Grandad action. Grandada.
Yeah, this is an absolute shambles.
To be honest, Cliff's a shambles here, but if I was in Cliff's situation, in other words, just having to look after a child for 30 minutes, I would do exactly what would be happening to me.
There would be a fire over here.
The fun thing about this is literally pulling out all the old cliches from an inept dad or grandfather figure that we've seen in who knows how many sitcoms from many, many decades, and yet somehow they managed to do that. It's 100% true to Cliff's character in this moment. Where he smashes the smoke alarm as well. He's like, did not think that through.
All that's missing in this scene is Donald Glover coming in with the pizzas from the Community Darkest Timeline episode.
Yeah, good shout. Clara and Mrs. Clara return. Cliff insists he would have caught that burner.
And Clara says, but you did catch it?
See, we're building trust.
It's like, aww.
Yeah, it is cute, but at the same time, Cliff is still in that overcompensating mode. It's like, yeah, this is totally working. I can convince myself this is working. And at the end of the scene, Clara asks him, oh, there's a weird fog outside. Is that something to worry about?
This is a no negativity zone. No negativity today.
Yeah, no talk about fog.
Yep. Oh, I forgot to mention, sorry, that the Cyborg and Ronnie scene ends with interference because the fog is rolling in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. So the fog is rolling in on everyone right now. James Herbert's been up to his old tricks.
Or John Carpenter.
Yep.
Meanwhile, in the underground, we get Angry Jane. Who took the bike? Pretty Polly makes the mistake of saying she hopes it was dumped down the well. That's where we get Jane saying, I'm going to fuck you up.
I don't know about you, but I really wanted to see that scene where Jane kicks the shit out of Pretty Polly.
Yeah, and we get more of Dr. Harrison just really doubling down on this thing I was talking about earlier, where it's like that whole kind of that really reactionary... You know what, I'm realising this is a theme in this episode. The way people deal with a catastrophe or a traumatic event, you get people who double down and become really reactionary about it, and you get people who think, well, no, we need to think of a more progressive way to make sure this doesn't happen again. Dr. Harrison has been the reactionary in this situation. She's been the 1949 Laura DeMille in this situation, because her question is, but who's protecting us when Jane insists that they have to protect Kay? And it's like, hang on, this was never meant to be your job.
You exist to protect Kay, and that's it.
And this is where I was starting to think, when you see the shots of the other personas looking on, they all look a wee bit blank. And that's what I'm thinking, is this a Dr. Harrison mass persuasion deal? Is that what's going down here? I feel like it could be. But Pretty Polly is the one that looks... maybe she's just shitting her pants because Jane is going to fuck her up, I'm not sure. But she does have a look about her like maybe she's having second thoughts.
So yeah, it's funny because when we talked about episodes 1 through 3 of this season, we talked about how all of the personalities coming together to prevent the sort of kind of suicidal depression, the darkness and the trauma was great. It was all the coping mechanisms coming in at the last second and just being enough to push it back. And we cheered those coping mechanisms at the time, and we were like, yes, go the coping mechanisms. And now it's like, oh no, F those coping mechanisms.
We were saying how like the jigsaw pieces and whatnot, like the father figure, it's always going to come back, because that's like the end of the episode. There's like jigsaw pieces. Has that somehow, not maybe infected is the word, the Harrison persona? Like maybe
because they did all eat them, didn't they?
They did, that's true. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I would be... Well, I don't know. I've tried to learn not to predict this show.
One of the things that's good about us being slightly behind in putting these episodes out is that we get to say all these theories, and then by the time the episode comes out, the theories have already been disproven.
And you, dear listeners, get to laugh at how wrong we were.
But don't tell us you weren't thinking it at the time as well. You sons of bitches. You're not all sons of bitches, I'm joking. Shout out Argentina, by the way. Haven't done that for a while.
Yeah, indeed. But one of the things that strikes me about this whole thing is, and again, it's one of those things that the show does, it's presenting this, in the most absurdist fashion, this inner turmoil of a single character being split into all these different personas. One of the things I think it's doing in this moment is metaphorically presenting the way in which when someone who's gone through trauma and they have established all these coping mechanisms, again, not to get too personal, but I know a wee bit about this, there is this idea that sometimes a traumatized person or anybody suffering from depression or anything like that can become terrified of the idea that they don't know who they are without the damage that's been done to them. And so for that reason, they get very, very attached to their coping mechanisms as something that cannot be dispensed with, because that is there's a big element of them feels like that is their persona.
Yeah, otherwise their defining feature is the trauma, and that's it. Right,
exactly. Yeah. And so to get rid of those things is a terrifying idea, because you've built so much of your survival on, well, I did this because that's me, I am these things, but they're not those things. They're the things that are supposed to, give you some sort of foundation to progress. And really what these things are doing, if you become too obsessed with them, is they just ultimately still embed you firmly in your own trauma. It's just that you've given a different name to it, essentially. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening here inside Jane at this moment.
So you get that with Jane, but you've also got the opposite side of that with Rita. But she's had 70 years of not being able to do anything. Now that she doesn't have the trauma, she is like probably the person that she was supposed to be. So you're kind of seeing her spread her wings and fly.
I do feel like there is a lot of mirroring going on in this season.
Yeah.
And we sort of mentioned some of it previously, but I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point, Alan. Yeah, I think that is... I do wonder, I'm always curious about how much the writers of a show like this talk about this stuff. I mean, I assume they have to, because this kind of stuff can't just happen by accident, although maybe it can, because having been a writer of long-form fiction myself, I know that sometimes actually things do happen by accident, and then halfway through writing you realise, oh, that's actually a great theme, I'll expand on it. So who knows, it could have been one of those things that it was just a set of different ideas started knitting themselves together, and then they identified it and decided to run with it. But it's a good call. I do think there's a nice what's that shitty overused phrase that I kept seeing in comics in the early 90s? Dark symmetry or some shit. I feel like there was like 20 odd different stories called that at some point.
Did every character in a Dark Symmetry story have lots of pouches on their outfits?
Shoulder pads.
Possibly. Meanwhile, Laura DeMille is caught in a loop in the hallway.
We've talked a lot about the music so far today, but the music while she's trying to get out of the manor and the loop's going was incredible.
Absolutely fantastic. And Michelle Gomez's physical comedy acting is so fucking good. Like some of the postures she pulls here, she's like a fucking Looney Tunes character. It's just fabulous.
The bag, see when she throws the bag, and it's just like it doesn't come back, and she's like
the delayed action is great. Show yourselves.
And then like at the end of the scene, it's the bag just getting slung back in. It's fucking amazing.
But speaking of Laura DeMille, back in 1949, she's burning the midnight oil in the canteen, and her colleague Wilhelm Hodges, that's a good name for this guy, is remarking that they should be celebrating because they've hit a recruitment record, and she has to correct to say, I hit a recruitment record.
For the 12th week running.
Yeah. And our pal Wilhelm here, I wonder if we'll hear him scream later. What I just reminded me, actually, wasn't there an episode of Doom Patrol that used a Wilhelm scream at some point?
I think so.
I can't mind where it was, though.
Was it Puppet Patrol?
Might have been Puppet Patrol, yeah. I mean, to be fair, it could fit in just about any episode. So he has a long spiel about this metahuman arms race, and she makes the case that the Sisterhood are pacifists, and he says, what does that make you? And he goes on to say that the Sisterhood of Dada are an untapped resource, and friend is just another word for opportunity. Fuck this guy. Fuck all the way off, dude.
He must have forgot to wear his black hat that day, but...
But this really brought it home to me. I think this makes it writ large in this scene, the overriding theme here, and really just reminding us of the reality of these metahumans being forced to be weapons. It's fucking horrible, man. It's such a horrible idea. And it reminded me of the thing Shelley said 2 episodes prior when she was talking to Jane, and she was given that vague impression of I was their dragon, I was dropped on entire towns. And it's like, considering how many decades have passed, how long did they keep using these metahumans to do shit in, you know, America's various wars across the globe? It's fucking horrible to think about. And it's like, in this show about these madcap freaks, once again, there is this really dark kind of political edge that I'm like, man, I can't believe you slipped that in there.
They touched on it in that really bad Suicide Squad movie a little bit, where they were like, well, what happens if Superman decides to go off and be a prick? We need our own metahumans. And it's been alluded to before, although that Suicide Squad movie, the David Ayer one, was a big pile of steaming turds.
Yep.
I've never really seen it in any DC stuff handled as well as it is in this series, particularly these couple episodes where you get a real good look at the sort of inner workings of the Bureau of Normalcy, rather than them just being this bad guy organisation you've seen a couple of times. You really see the inner workings, and it is just that horrible military bureaucracy where, as the guy literally says, anything is just a commodity to be used.
Yeah, it's all resources, nothing else. And this is the start of the Cold War, bear in mind, this time in history. So yeah, there's so much like historical meat in this subtext here. It's, oh man, why do we love this show so much? It's because of this and all the other stuff. Alright, meanwhile at the Dada party pad, Rita and Malcolm wear masks of each other's faces, the aforementioned mask which has brought it all together as to who Malcolm is in limbo. Man, this scene, there's so much going on here because I'm sort of loving that Rita and Malcolm have this genuine love for each other, but I'm also totally with the other characters going, alright, but, and. Because, yeah, and it's voiced in the ensuing scene as they begin to explain we were supposed to be about more than this. So they're doing this sort of Broadway pastiche because at this point in history, that's the thing. And Rita's trying to insist, oh no, but we're lampooning it. It still has power. And Holly's delivery of, oh, 'cause you're in love, please kill me now. Love it. I'm here for Holly all day. And so they have this conversation about Rita's still trying to defend it, that it's still doing a satire of playful frivolities, is what she says, and that that's somehow still a weapon that can be used culturally. And Sachiko gets very angry at this. And she paraphrases Jack Nicholson's Joker by saying, this world needs an enema. Which I thought was an interesting choice to use that phrase. And then Lloyd has the best speech here, which really gave me chills, when he talks about the past few decades. They've seen plague, depression, World War, Holocaust, the atomic bombings of Japan, and then, of course, also the ongoing legacy of racism, Jim Crow, etc. And you realise in that moment just how real this is for these characters. Because, again, as I've mentioned previously, as well as just being metahuman freaks, they also have all their different social and cultural baggage as well. And this is a fucking deep scene. It's like, how does this ridiculously silly show keep doing this?
A guy with a bike on his back is giving this as well.
Exactly. I know, it delivers this entire speech with that, and there wasn't one moment in that speech where I was like, alright, bike guy, what are you fucking talking about? Why don't you transform and roll out of here? But it comes down to the question, is like, how are we improving the world? We've watched the Bureau change from Bureau of Oddities, the Bureau of Normalcy, in accordance with ideologies we all oppose. And the one word for us, we're complicit. And I was like, wow, it's not shying away from the actual socio-political stuff that was basically what Dada was all about. And, you know, if for some reason this is your first episode listening to us talk about Doom Patrol, I did talk more about that previous episode about what the origins of Dada were, but it was very much in the first instance a reaction to the First World War and about destabilising all of the conventions in society that they saw as leading to that. And I was like, man, they're really getting the gristle out of that. They're really going into it. It's like, and so Sachiko, Holly, they're very much shouting about the eternal flagellation. It's time to do it. And Malcolm quotes Nietzsche as he comes around to their way of thinking. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. And the most exciting part about the end of the scene is that Rita agrees. And it's like, holy shit, militant Rita.
Yep.
This is not something we've seen before. And they all agree that if Laura won't go along with it, they have to regard her as the enemy. And it's like, oh, man.
Rita-calized.
Oh, hey. So then we get a quick blast of present-day Sachiko in the middle of Frenzy Cyclone, doing whatever the hell she's doing with her part of the eternal flagellation. Let's bear in mind, Sachiko has literally any superpower unless you can think of what it might be and name it, and then she no longer has it. I wrote in my notes, Sachiko impersonates Bruce Buffer. Because her line is, it's time! Introducing first, the eternal flagellation! It's a hip reference to MMA announcer Bruce Buffer.
MMA.
Is that more Dada sound poetry?
Yep. There's a little bit of Lady Gaga there for you.
And as we get Vic on the operating table and notices the flagellation symbol appear on the screen and asks, was that there before?
Completely drugged up out his nut at this point.
And Stina did not upset me. Stop upsetting me with this underground stuff doing patrol. God damn it. But Jane trying to bring new shoes to Kay. New shoes. It's a hip reference to Leo Johnson from Twin Peaks. For you kids. Jane tries to tell her the bike was borrowed. Jane, don't lie to Kay. She knows. And Kay says, we both know that's bullshit. Jane eats some door. And then the fog arrives. And speaking of heartbreaking scenes, Requiem for Limmy's plasterer. Cliff on the laptop with Ginger. I'm like, how the fuck are you talking to Ginger again? Did you use Clara's card?
I don't think he did because she took her card back.
Yeah, I was unsure about that. Where did he get the money to do this? Where's he getting the funds? Oh, mind you, he did sell a bunch of shit, I guess. But fog arrives.
He doesn't get to look at Ginger's hoo-ha even for a minute.
Jane, Cliff and Vic end up in the desolate Dada party pad. Honestly, seeing that place desolate just upsets me. I don't like it. But Vic and Cliff are both out their tits.
Welcome to apparently my drug-fueled fantasy sequence or some shit. I love that Vic laughs.
That's my least favourite Kanye album.
They're both giggling at that. And Jane's fucking raging. I'm actually stuck here with you metal poison morons.
Yeah, and then they're jerking around uncontrollably, being forced to effectively Dada dance. So as we get the Cliff line, are we doing Dada?
I love Larry's response. Is this it? I've been to scarier dance parties at Church Lock-ins. Jane says, that sounds scary as fuck.
Good shit. So then we start to get this flashback to 1949 when Laura enters the party.
Boo.
Yeah, and she's brought the bureau. She's brought the popo with her. You actually skipped ahead slightly with the Larry thing because the next thing we get is Larry returning to the manor and walking into the kitchen and Laura asking, how did you get in? And he's like, through the door? It's like, did you seal it? And he's like, I don't know. But can I just say shout out to Matt Bomer, because when you think about everything he's been through in these few episodes, I really do think that his delivery here of the one word he gets, you could really feel the weight of his realisation of how he's fucked up with just the delivery of the word fuck. But yeah, back in 1949, we see Hodges enter with the guards behind him, and he comments, well, you're finally getting promoted out of the mailroom. It's, oh, fuck you, man. Fuck you. And Laura reluctantly, but nonetheless goes all the way with it, grants them all weapon status. It's like, fuck you.
Oh man, see the bit where guards are grabbing them all and she's shouting they won't fight back,
yeah,
they're
they
pacifists.
won't fight back, they're pacifists.
That was heartbreaking as a fuck.
It was horrible. Yeah. And when you think of how many times in history that situation has played out for real, you know, and I know I keep banging this drum, but this show does everything in such an absurd fashion, but it still gives you just enough to make your thoughts linger on these things, you know. Jane begins to realise as Laura appears in present day that this is a flashback.
Is this about you? Is this some kind of fucking flashback?
And I quite enjoy this because Jane, you know, has had so many experiences that are quite analogous to this.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need somebody else's bullshit. I have enough bullshit of my own, thank you very much. In 1949, Rita telling Laura, we were a family. That tore me up because this is effectively Rita's third family betrayal. Mm-hmm. Because all her problems with her mother, and then what she went through with Niles, and now this shit.
Yep.
And then we get a double tragedy because Rita's about to get whatever this weapon is in her gut, and Malcolm steps in and takes it instead, killing him. And actually, a triple tragedy. It kills him and his canary. And I actually yelled at the screen, "Not the canary!" But it's Wally Sage that does it.
Yeah.
It's forced into doing it, and you can see how traumatised he is after it. It's like, this is horrible. Everything about this is horrible. And Rita, distraught, opens up Malcolm's chest and takes the paperclip heart, and then does a super cool escape move, I have to say.
Yeah, that blobbing out is so good.
Yeah, through the vent, that was pretty great.
Some Metroid shit, man. Just like...
I do have some questions about this, though, because we know that the Dada party pad was created by Shelley within the fog. How were the guards able to enter without Shelley being aware of it?
Presumably Laura knows how to get in and out of it.
Yeah, I guess there would have to be something like that, but it was... Yeah, I just had a question about that.
Don't fucking question Doom Patrol, Craig.
Sorry, man.
We're not here to criticise. We're here to relentlessly fillet.
We're here to kiss ass for 2 hours. Nothing else.
And I'm all out of ass.
So present day, Rita reveals herself. And Larry recognising Rita and Rita not responding, hated that. It made me cry inside. Because I now have lots of questions about Rita that I guess they're going to get answered in the forthcoming episodes. But this version, we've now had 2 versions of Rita, presumably, who've lived through the bulk of the 20th century.
Yep.
Is that what we're saying here?
Yep.
Unless, of course, the other Rita has left pretty soon after the events of 1949 and time travelled. That's the other possibility. That could be revealed later. But this Rita is the same one who lost her memory. So I'm now wondering how much she's regained, if indeed anything. Or is this still the same Rita who's only about the Sisterhood of Dada? I'm thinking the latter because she seems very militant still.
Yeah, it seems that way, and she barely acknowledges the rest of the Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
She just focuses all her rage on Laura.
Mm.
And they reveal their master plan.
Yeah, they teleport away to this giant bird cage that we saw Holly welding earlier. And all the Sisterhood arrive. And shout out to Brendan Fraser, because his delivery here of the line, "What's going on now?" So the egg hatches, and out pops what I can only describe as a sort of winged avatar of Malcolm. I was trying to find out if maybe this was a reference to a piece of Dada art, and if it is, it's escaped me, I don't know. But the design of this thing is disturbing as fuck. Yeah. That's what I can say.
Yep.
It's also hysterically funny.
Yeah, again, it's seesawing on the Doom Patrol seesaw.
It was not what I was expecting.
No, I think that's fair. Listeners, if anyone out there can 100% say hand on heart or hand on canary that you fully predicted this is where this was going, write in and let us know.
At fSobrieTV on Twitter.
Yeah, so that happens, and Holly tells Rita it has to be Laura who sets him free, but Rita loses patience and opens the gate, and there's a whole humongous flock of these things zoom out. It does seem that they all have different faces. I've written in my notes here, I'm now laughing at what I've written, because I've written, Sachiko clarifies. I'm not sure why I wrote clarifies unless I meant it sarcastically, that this is the prologue to Reckoning. I don't think that clarifies anything.
Okay, is it Cliff that says, was that it?
Yes. And after Sachiko says that, he says, that sounds bad. Is it bad?
One of the winged creatures shits on Jane's face.
And each of the Doom Patrol are taken away by winged avatars that I think I've got distinct relevant faces for each of them.
Laura's like, F this.
Oh yeah. She transforms into bird mode and is out of there. That was a hip reference to the 1980s Transformers TV series. Because at the end, it seems like Jane is taken by a whole flock that I think have the faces of her personas, it seems. So all I can say about this is that happened.
Is this bad? And the response is only if you are.
Yeah, Lloyd says only if you are. So,
Perfect. To be honest, I'm still highest.
Yeah, so this, that line of Lloyd's only if you are, is now making me wonder, where are things going to go? Because obviously we're going to get some kind of confrontation between Doom Patrol and the Sisterhood, but could it be that in the long run they end up forming some kind of alliance when the Sisterhood realise Doom Patrol aren't bad?
Is this just wishful thinking on our part?
Yeah.
Is this just my fanfic? I really want the Sisterhood to have some kind of redemption, because, I mean, the show has done everything that shows that they're not bad.
Yeah.
You could sort of look at the conversation between Vic and Ronnie from earlier in the episode as being the microcosm for this larger theme of Doom Patrol versus the Sisterhood. Neither of these sides are bad.
Badass.
So the next episode, incidentally, is called Subconscious Patrol. So I don't know whether that means each of the characters is going to have to descend into their own subconscious.
There's a lot of that in this series, like...
There already is, aye. But the other thing it made me think was, obviously, Dada was a precursor to surrealism, and both those things are very much about mining the subconscious, so that might come into play in some fashion. I don't know. Funnily enough, said episode is now already available on HBO. And all that wrapped up, all that's left to say is, for me, this episode, in case you didn't already guess, I'm giving this 9 5s out of 9.
Well, you won't be shocked to hear, Craig, because I've already said it twice. This is...
Unless that was, you were doing a bait and switch.
Yeah. I get confused when two episodes have the same score. This is also 9 5s out of 9.
That's a call forward to the outtakes you'll hear in a second.
This episode is all the freaky flying faced fucks out of all the freaky flying faced fucks for me. It's so good. Aye.
Alright, so that wraps it up for another 2 fantastic episodes of Doom Patrol.
18 5s out of 18. You don't hear that very often.
Loving this show all the way.
Yeah. It's fucking sad that we've only got 3 episodes left.
But not sad we're getting a whole other season after this. Woohoo!
It's a joy to continue to talk about this ridiculous and brilliant series.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully you guys are enjoying hearing us fangirl about it, even if it is slightly belatedly, because the rest of you watched it by now. We started late, we're sorry. When James had to move house. James had to move his Dada party pad. But yeah, hopefully you'll stick around for these final few episodes, and maybe beyond. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to be a gas. Whatever this show dishes out, I feel confident I'm going to love it. Yeah. Apart from Woodsy's worry corner, which still has a bit of worry. It's my coping mechanism worry corner. I don't know who I am without the worry corner.
So, once again, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time for more Doom Patrol related nonsense and potentially other shorter podcasts within.
Just for that guy on Reddit.
Yeah, fuck that guy. If you're listening, well, thanks for downloading again, but fuck you. And yeah, we'll see you then. Hamiltron will give you all the places where you can find us online. It's not going to include Reddit.
I think it's time to get our doodads out of the gizmos and back into the what's it.
Just looking at my bottle of East Coast IPA. That's looking almost exactly 50% there.
Interesting. So I'm looking at my glass that I've poured, because I'm not an uncouth person like you. I poured my beer into a glass.
Oh, la-dee-da.
Your Majesty. And my glass is currently looking more in the vein of a semi-eternal flagellation.
To be honest, I'm in a glass as well, so if both of us are in glasses, we can't do our outro. Hang on, I'll just pour this back in the bottle.
That's where we were going wrong, god damn it.
There we go, it's gone back in.
I hope you've all enjoyed this piece of Dada performance art that we're doing here. And if you have, or even if you haven't, that's half the bottle. PIFFLE-PAFFLE.
fSobrieTV, Episode 27, A Cab, All Cyborgs Are Bitching, was conceived by Craig Woods, Alan Todd and James Hamilton, edited by James Hamilton, and is a production of Half the Bottle. The theme music is Colossal Estates, by Errors, available on Rock Action Records. Come say PIFFLE-PAFFLE to us on Facebook at facebook.com/fSobrieTPodcast, on Twitter at fSobrieTcast, on Instagram at fSobrieT, and search YouTube for fSobrieTPodcast. And do us all the usual liking, subscribing, commenting, you know how the internet works. Now, 27 episodes in, and you'd think the three chuckle fucks who host this podcast would be getting marginally better at it as time goes on, but alas, dear listener, it appears they're getting worse, so strap in for a blooper reel longer than the eternal flagellation.
So we don't see also we don't skip up do ba ba do ba ba do ba.
Do jazz and the timey-bobs.
Woodsy talk pretty one day. I was doing a Dada sound poem. I'm glad you appreciated it.
Such a hip, current, up-to-date podcast. The Wild Hearts is the music for one of the segments.
I think I'm the only person in the world who hasn't seen the Wild Hearts live and don't know the names of any of their songs.
Holy shit. That's it. We're going to need to do a music episode all about the Wild Hearts where you and I just tell Alan about the Wild Hearts.
Yeah, I thought it was mandatory in the 90s that you had to either see them because you wanted to see a support band that was supporting them, or they were supporting a band you went to see.
It was either one of the two. Yeah.
I remember saying this to someone 10 years ago and they were like, what the fuck? How have you not seen the Wild Hearts? And like, exactly what you just said there. We were in Sleazy's one night and I think fucking Ginger and somebody else from the band were at the end of the bar and they were like, that's the Wild Hearts? And I was like, where? What ones? And they were like, fucking hell, like just Alan, you missed out on an entire rite of passage.
The Wild Hearts were at the end of the bar and Three Colours Red were up in the booth by the window.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Three Colours Red were pish, man. Three Colours pish.
Three Colours Brown.
I love it, I love it.
James Cribbins, help my fucking Bob.
Assist my Robert.
He's your Willie, he's our Willie, he's Abbody's Willie.
Abbody's Willie.
He's out with Willie.
There's a joke that, according to our stats, about 10%
no
of our
one will
listeners will
understand.
get. And I think that just about wraps it up for another episode of fSobrieTV. Cue the
Toodle
music.
pip. Oh.
Toodle pip. I fucked it.
Right, 1, 2,
3.
Toodle pip. How
that
is
again.
that worse? How is that worse? What the fuck?
At least we all said the same thing.
Right, 1, 2, 3. Adios, muchachos.
There were points in this episode where I really noticed how good the sync-up is between Larry Zuck and
Zari Bomer. Zari Bomer? Zari Bomer.
Zari Bomer.
Was he talk pretty one day?
I'll start that again. There were points in this episode, in fact, these last two episodes, where I really noticed the sync-up between Larry Zuck and Larry... Is it Larry Zuck? Have I fucked that?
It's Matthew Zuck.
Matthew
I
Zuck and
thought
Larry
you were.
Bomer.
I thought you were saying that deliberately, as in
No, I fucked
you were
it.
going to say Larry Zuck and Larry Bomer.
Right, so I'll start that again.
So not only did you fuck up, but I misinterpreted your fuck up as something deliberate, which is a double layer of fuck up.
I'm just waiting in the wings to really fuck this up.
What is happening?
Is it too much to ask not to fuck ourselves up so spectacularly?
To paraphrase Willoughby Kipling. Guys, don't worry, it all makes sense in Dada. Are we doing Dada? Oh, fucking hell. Speaking is hard, isn't it?
So, wait, what are their names again?
What I've noticed though is that the sync up between Larry and
Matthew Zuck and Matt Bowman.
Matt Bowman. This is the confusion arised. Everyone was like, they can't both be called Matthew.
So they must both be called Larry. I don't understand your thought process.
Because then there would be three Larrys. There would be the actor, the voice, and the character.
You're right, that is absurd.
it's like the one Stooges.
Oh, I'm in fucking tears out.
Larry, and Larry. Oh, why
This is going to be the best outtake segment ever.
I don't know what's happened to my brain. Apparently I get confused when two people have the same name.
I realised, by the way, after listening to the last episode, that our outtake segments are getting longer and longer. This is going to be the longest one yet.
We're getting worse at podcasting.
Oh, Jesus Christ, we're like Zack Snyder in terms of filmmaking. Started off competent, went downhill.
So there are moments in this episode.
We need a Hamilton in here to kick our asses.
Professional.
It might just be worth stopping it at this point, and we'll pick up. I'll start
I think you're
again.
right. There's too much laughs.
Okay.
Either way, PIFFLE-PAFFLE. Nope,
No, wait,
that's off the bottle. That's right. God, I'm so confused.
Larry Paffle.
Oh.